Chair, you have a live mic.
Oh, we got a good crowd. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
We're going to do things a little bit out of order this morning because we want to recognize the group. But before we have our invocation, Mr. Ed Finn, who leads our entire financial team, we were in here to the wee hours of all night Thursday, right? We spent Friday morning in here as well. And, you know, a lot of times, most of the time, it's the people behind the scenes that really do the heavy lifting that don't get seen, don't get heard, and sometimes, unfortunately, don't get appreciated. And the five of us didn't want to miss that opportunity. So, Mr. Finn, not only are we going to ask your group to lead the pledge, but after the pledge, I'd like you to take the podium and introduce the people in your group. And then we'd like to come down and take a photo with you because, you know, we were watching you all scramble. And even though, Commissioner McDaniel and a few of us were throwing out numbers, we don't do math in public very well. So we know you had people behind the scenes actually crunching the real numbers and bringing us back, actual solutions. And that effort was noticed and appreciated by all of us. So we want to recognize you all with the pledge and then afterwards as well. So having said that, Rabbi, sir, the podium is yours.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
As we gather here today for this, our commissioners' meeting, following the Jewish New Year, and in the midst of our county's centennial celebration, let us invoke blessings of unity, wisdom, equality, communal harmony, and environmental stewardship for our community during this beautiful fall season. With a spirit of renewal and the reflection left behind from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, let us also soon welcome back our seasonal residents, whose imminent return adds richness to our community's tapestry. May their presence remind us of the importance of inclusivity and diversity. Let our decisions be just, equitable, and in harmony with the values of the season as we strive for a sustainable and harmonious future. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Finn, why don't you bring all your group right up here to the center?
Front and center.
Come on, even the people who don't want to come up.
2, 3, 4.
Sir?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Finn, the podium's yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your team, and then we'll come down there and take a photo.
Thank you, sir. Edward Finn, Deputy County Manager. And first, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to excel on Thursday night.
And Friday morning.
And Friday morning. Appreciate that. With that, the lead of the budget office is Chris Johnson. And perhaps before I start, I'm going to tell the board that 3/4 or more of the budget office has only been in the budget office for, in many cases, less than a year. This, in fact, is their first cycle through the budget office or the budget process. So,
How's that going?
I heard they're all resigned, on Monday.
I hate to say what I promised them to keep them all on board, but no, we appreciate the recognition. Chris Johnson, who you've met and known, and I hope Laura, who's one of our longer-term employees. Stand up, Laura. Blanca, relatively new. Maggie, relatively new. AJ, again, relatively new. And with that, happy to take a photo and do the best we can with that.
Great, thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Let's go down there or stay up here.
No, we'll go down there. What do you think? Up here? Yeah, we'll just stay up here like we normally do. We're not so crowded. I went down there.
I'm going to be pointed at.
Thank you all.
Commissioners. Agenda changes for the Board of County Commissioners meeting September 26th, 2023. First, move item 16D2 to 11C. This is a recommendation to accept an award from the Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant Funding Program through the Florida Department of Commerce in the amount of $981,067 for the construction and expansion of the Collier Senior Center Golden Gate facility. Authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreement and authorize the necessary budget amendments. This item is being moved to the regular agenda by Commissioner Saunders' request. Move item 16A1 to 11D. This is a recommendation to direct staff to advertise and bring back for a public hearing an ordinance amending the Land Development Code to establish rules of decorum for neighborhood information meetings. This item is being moved to the regular agenda at Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner LaCastro's separate requests. Move item 16A7 to 11E. This is a recommendation to approve an agreement for sale and purchase with 1. Gary D. Higdon, 2. Matthew Van Cleve, 3. Pedro Juan Perez Castro, 4. Richard D. Brewer, and 5. John Edwin English as trustee of the John Edwin English Trust under the Conservation Collier Land Acquisition Program at a cost not to exceed $977,220. This item is being moved at Commissioner McDaniel's request. Do have a note, there's a correction to item 9A. The location is within District 4, not District 2 as listed. Just a reminder, we have court reporter breaks set for 10:30 and 2:50. With that, County Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Chair? Agenda changes for the rest of the board as well as ex parte on the summary and consent.
Okay. Commissioner Colwell, do you have any changes?
No changes to the agenda. I do have ex parte on 9A. I have meetings and emails.
This item's big.
Nothing on 9B.
Yeah, just on consent and agenda.
Just on
we take
consent and
ex-
summary.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, consent and summary. I'm sorry. Yeah. So nothing on consent and summary ex parte, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to the other. Commissioners, Saunders.
Yeah, I have no changes and no ex parte.
Okay. Commissioner Hall.
No changes or ex parte.
Commissioner McDaniel.
No ex parte. I do have a suggested change, and that's the continuance of 17B. As it's our favorite subject of Rock Road. I know you said you didn't want to hear about it anymore, but too bad.
No, it wasn't. We all took a vote.
oh, we did?
No, no. Go ahead, sir.
We did not take a vote without everybody here. My suggestion is that we continue this item for at least a month and allow for some other things that are in the works with regard to advisory committees at all, as opposed to creating a advisory board specifically for that for such a small budget amount. Now, I'll concede to Commissioner Saunders' thoughts with regard to this if in fact, because Rock Road used to be mine, and last year, or a couple years ago, it went over to Commissioner Saunders. So I don't want to lean in too far.
No issues at all with that, as long as there's no legal problems in terms of advertising, that sort of thing.
You would have to re-advertise it, but those cost for about $500.
Yeah, I don't have any issues.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue that item for a month, and then I'll coordinate with the county attorney in the event that we need to bring it forward again.
All right, I'll second your motion to continue that
So,
item.
got a motion by Commissioner McDaniel, a second by Commissioner Saunders. All in favor of continuing this a month?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And just to repeat, no ex parte and no other changes.
Okay, and I have no changes and no ex parte on the consent or summary agenda either. Next.
That brings us to approval of today's regular consent and summary agenda as amended, including ex parte disclosure provided by commissioners.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner McDaniel, second by Commissioner Saunders. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 2B is approval of the meeting minutes from August 22nd, 2023 board meeting.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Commissioner Hall, second by Commissioner Colwell. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 2C is approval of the minutes from the August 28th, 2023 emergency board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner McDaniel, second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 3, awards and recognitions. We have one today, a 20-year attendee, Kimberly Brandis, a Transportation Engineering Division, 20 years. Congratulations.
About that.
Item 4, proclamations. Item 4A is a proclamation designating October 2023 as Florida Native Plant Month, to be accepted by Beth Courtwright, Treasurer, Naples Chapter, Florida Native Plant Society. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Item 4B is a proclamation designating September 2023 as Payroll Awareness Month in Collier County, to be accepted by Lori Brown, Aaron Roxbury, and Julissa Perez, Clerk of Court's Office. Congratulations.
Who's not aware of the payroll?
Speech.
Commissioners, if we get a motion to accept the proclamations.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner McDaniel. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
Mr. Chair, I have one registered speaker at this time, having trouble reading this last name. Leroy? Yeah, what's your last name, sir? Chambliss. If you'll come up to this podium, please. You have 3 minutes, sir.
The Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 23, reads in part, right to privacy. Every natural person has the right to be let alone and free from governmental interference into the person's private life, except as herein provided. Citing this section and the Roe v. Wade decision, the Florida Supreme Court declared abortion legal in R.E. v. T.W., an unnamed person. However, Roe has now been overturned by the Dobbs decision. The question remains why the developing child has no right to personhood or protection under our Constitution and its laws. Florida Statute 78209 states, the unlawful killing of an unborn child by any injury to the mother of such child would be murder if it resulted in the death of such mother, shall be deemed murder in the same degree as that which would be committed against the mother. If only the statute ended there, but unfortunately, the next sentence reads, any person other than the mother who unlawfully kills the unborn child by an injury to that mother. This is moral schizophrenia. If the preborn child is wanted, and it is personhood and its death is murder. But if it's not wanted by the mother, the child lacks personhood and can be killed. Ripped from its mother's womb and dismembered, while some may cheer, saying it is her right, I'm here to tell you that this isn't right. This is a wrong and a murderous wrong. David, inspired by the Holy Spirit, wrote in Psalms 139, 13 through 17. For you formed my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. My frame wasn't hidden from you when I was made in secret, woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my body, and your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when there was none of them. How precious to me in your sights, O God! How vast are the sum of your thoughts! We have purpose, meaning, and value because we are created by holy God. Members of this board, the Dobbs decision has passed the torch to you via the legislative process to decide this issue. And I ask you to remember God's word and act to ban the murder of the preborn child in Collier County. Thank you.
That is our only registered speaker at this time.
Next.
Commissioners, that brings us with items 8A and 8B being continued to the October 10th, 2023 BCC meeting. That brings us to our advertised public hearings. Item 9A is a recommendation to approve a rezone ordinance related to the Brookside Marina by changing the zoning classification of real property from the residential single-family 4 zoning district to the general commercial zoning district, limited to a marina use for the property located on Davis Boulevard, approximately 0.2 of 1 mile east of Tamiami Trail East in Section 2, Township 50, South, Range 25 East, consisting of 4.4 plus or minus acres and providing an effective date. We need to have everyone that's going to participate stand up and be sworn in by the court reporter.
County Manager, just a point of order, unless I have an old copy here, but we talked about it yesterday. It still says on my copy, which I got this morning, District 2, and I think it's still District 3, isn't it, or no?
It's 4, and I made
Four.
the correction went on the change sheet.
Oh, it did, okay,
Yes, sir.
got it.
Thank you. At this point, we'll invite the applicant up to begin his, ex parte, sorry, thank you. I have to get help from my ex parte communication from the commissioners.
Okay, Commissioner Cole?
This is when I was supposed to read
Yeah.
that. Yes, I do have it.
Four.
Ex parte on item 9A, meetings and emails.
And Mr. Chairman, I have ex parte on that item as well, meetings, some emails.
Okay, Commissioner Hall?
Same as me, meetings and emails on the item.
Okay, Commissioner McDaniel?
As well, meetings and emails.
Same for me, meetings and emails. Okay, let's
All right.
press with
At
the
this
applicant.
time, we will begin with the applicant. Okay,
So you're going to have to give me a minute.
we're going to give Troy a minute.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I didn't say this at the start, but if anybody just silence your cell phones, we usually announce that in the beginning. Appreciate it.
All right, Clay, you're good.
Silence time.
Did you?
Yeah, and volume off.
Notice that I remained silent.
You only have to tell me 3 times. All right, sir, the podium's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Clay Brooker. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Cheffy Passidomo in downtown Naples. I represent Naples Marina Holdings, LLC, which owns the lands generally known for decades as the Brookside Marina. The matter before you today is a request to rezone the submerged lands or waters generally associated with the marina. On your screen is our applicant team. John Giglio, he is the owner of the property. Hans Wilson, professional engineer, principal of Hans Wilson and Associates, a marine engineering and environmental consulting firm. Stephanie Caldwell, professional engineer, civil engineer and principal of Green Site Engineering. Jeff Curl, landscape architect, Emerge Design, LLC, and Jim Banks, transportation engineer for JMP Transportation Engineering. On the screen, this is my client's property, comprised of approximately 7.6 acres, located on Davis Boulevard. Let me see. Here's Davis Boulevard along the bottom. and you see the east trail over here in the bottom left corner. So that's just east of East Trail. This property, all of which is owned by the applicant, contains both uplands, dry lands, and privately owned submerged lands or water. However, the application filed by Naples Marina Holdings involves only this portion of the property, comprised primarily of the submerged lands. Here's the county zoning map for the area. You'll see that the subject submerged lands are currently zoned RSF4, or Residential Single Family 4. The associated uplands here, you'll see here, are designated or zoned C4, or Commercial 4. There are three fundamental premises to this application. First, it seeks to reinstall wet slips in the submerged lands that have existed for decades, albeit with a temporary pause over the last few years, which I'll explain in a minute. Second, the subject property is submerged, it's water. So marina use and wet slips are the only logical, reasonable uses that can be put to this property. Third, the submerged lands are owned privately by Mr. Giglio. They are man-made and not waters owned by the state. However, they are subject to regulation by DEP and Army Corps of Engineers because they are navigable waters. Now, I'd like to take a couple minutes to show you that what we're proposing today is no different than what has existed at this site for decades. In fact, what we're proposing is less intense, a fewer number of slips. Here's an aerial from 1979. Here is Rock Creek as Mother Nature formed her. This part is natural. However, this part coming in to the marina here was created by man, dredged in the 1960s. That means these submerged lands are privately owned. This aerial shows that from no later than 1979, some 44 years ago, the Western Basin, and you'll hear me refer to the Western Basin, this is this portion of the submerged lands, held numerous covered wet slips. And you can also see by this time on the uplands, the marina building was already in existence, and that building still exists today. Please note here along the southern shoreline of the submerged lands, there are no dock slips yet. Fast forward to 2012, a little bit better picture. First and foremost, you see that the covered boat slips, there are 3 finger piers here in the Western Basin, continued to exist by 2012. In addition, permitting history indicates that 10 years earlier in 2002 to 2003, the DEP, the Army Corps, and the county approved additional slips along the southern shoreline here, and they were installed. The submerged lands at that time, again 2002, were dredged to remove any contaminated sediment to clean the waters, and the additional slips along the southern shoreline were then installed. They continue to exist today. Here's a copy of the county's approval for the additional wet slips back in 2002. Well, actually, this was actually approved in July 2003. And just so to continue, these covered boat slips were in existence, and these slips were approved as additional wet slips by the county in July 2003. This is another aerial perspective of the marina as it existed in the first decade of the 2000s. At this time, a total of 234 slips were approved for the marina, 137 wet slips in the water, and 97 dry slips on the uplands. And I think just to point out, this gives you a little bit better idea. Here are the 3 finger piers, and you can see the boats moored underneath the covered wet slips. However, here in 2014 shows that in the Western Basin, the 3 piers are gone. At some point in 2012 and 2014, a predecessor to the current owner, Mr. Giglio, removed the wet slips due to their dilapidated state. Don't know the exact reason why, although we understand that there was some damage from hurricanes and storms and so forth. This is essentially what you see on the screen, what the submerged lands look like today. In 2017, 3 years after this aerial photograph, the submerged lands were dredged once again to remove any contaminated sediment. So this is twice now in the past 20 years, again, to clean the waters. Then in 2018, Naples Marina Holdings, Mr. Giglio, purchased the property. At around this time, Mr. Giglio entered into a lease with Freedom Boat Club, many of whose representatives are here today, to use these boat slips. There is no formal relationship between Mr. Giglio and Freedom Boat Club other than as landlord and tenant. As previously stated, Mr. Giglio's goal is to reinstall the wet slips in the Western Basin, albeit at a lower number than that which had existed for decades. This slide shows the conceptual layout of the proposed reinstallation of the wet slips in the Western Basin. It shows the reinstallation of 73 slips here. These won't be covered, they'll be open air, so that's one difference. But if you take the 73 that we're proposing and you add it to the 39 existing along the southern shoreline, you get a grand total of 112 wet slips proposed for the subject submerged lands. If you recall, a total of 137 wet slips previously existed in the submerged lands for decades. This layout proposes 25 fewer wet slips than previously existed. So Mr. Giglio is not requesting any increase in numbers or intensity of the slips. In order to reinstall these slips in the Western Basin, the first step was to secure permits from the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. That has been done. Here is the 2018 DEP permit, which is still in operation today. Our focus then turned to the county, hoping it would approve the 73 wet slips through the site development plan process, just like the county did back in 2003, a previous slide that I showed you. However, we were advised that a rezone was required. So here we are. The rezone request before you today seeks a rezone to a limited or restricted C4, which basically allows marina uses and nothing more. The rezone, if approved, would be restricted as is shown here. You'll see the permitted uses are marinas and essentially everything that goes with marinas, boat slips and piers and walkways and such. Water transportation of passengers. That's, for example, a shuttle, a water shuttle taking you from this site to, say, Tent City or somewhere else in Naples Bay. Water transportation services. This is basically chartering of commercial boats. For example, if a fishing guide would like to take some folks out fishing. And amusement and recreation services. Sounds kind of a funky kind of title, but that is basically recreational boat rentals. Next is the prohibited uses. What won't be permitted if this is approved are liveaboards, can't live at the dock on board your boat, and personal watercraft, such as sea-doos, jet skis, wave runners, those sorts of things. County staff is recommending approval of this application, and on May 4th, 2023, about 4 months ago, the Planning Commission also recommended approval unanimously. In the staff report, which is part of your agenda materials, county staff has found this application consistent with the county's growth management plan and land development code. In fact, the county's land use regulations prioritize and prefer this site for marina operations. Here is policy 10.1.1 of the conservation and coastal management element of the growth management plan. You'll note the priorities for water-dependent and water-related uses, which is what we're talking about here. And the first is public recreational facilities or recreational facilities, and this site simply doesn't lend itself to recreational facilities. public boat ramps. While a ramp has existed for decades on the uplands, it is private. The site would be overwhelmed if opened up to unlimited public use. And then the next priority in your growth management plan is marinas. So the county's growth management plan prioritizes this site for marina use. The application before you today implements this policy of the growth management plan. You'll also note in Objective 10.1 the reference to the county's manatee protection plan. Here's a summary of the county's manatee protection plan. This plan is codified in the Land Development Code at Section 5.05.02. The manatee protection plan is the county's only land use regulation that specifically addresses how many slips are authorized at any given marina site. And the way it does that is it ranks each site with three criteria. Water depth, basically it looks at a depth of 4 to 5 feet minimum. Native marine habitat, things like seagrasses, are seagrasses on location. And manatee abundance, and the way they evaluate that criteria is they look at how many water-caused manatee deaths within 5 miles have occurred. Once you evaluate those three criteria, you get to one of 3 possible ratings: preferred, moderate, or protected. And then the boat slip densities, how the county's Land Development Code qualifies or quantifies the number of slips that are permitted at each location. If the site is preferred, you get 18 boat slips for every 100 feet of shoreline. Moderate is 10 per 100. Protected is 1 per 100. The county has confirmed that the subject site ranks as a preferred site under the Manatee Protection Plan. It shows that we are permitted, or this site is permitted, a total of 311 boat slips. Now that boat slips, that number includes both wet and dry on the uplands. A total of 311 is permitted. However, while 311 are permitted, the proposal before you today seeks permission for 112. That's just 36% of what the Manatee Protection Plan authorizes for this site. The county encourages outreach to surrounding neighbors for land use applications like this one, and the rezone process requires one neighborhood information meeting. On January 7th in 2022, we held the first neighborhood information meeting. On May 16th, 2022, we had an in-person meeting with Naples Marina Holdings, Freedom Boat Club, and Brookside neighbors. On May 17th, we had a meeting with former Commissioner Taylor and Brookside neighbors. And then on June 30th of 2022, we had a conference call with Naples Marina Holdings, Freedom Boat Club, and Brookside neighbors. And then finally on July 19th, 2022, we held a second neighborhood information meeting. That second one was partly caused by, we had some technical difficulties with Zoom call-in on the first neighborhood information meeting. In my opinion, the communications with the neighbors have been amicable and informative. We've learned of the neighborhood's concerns and taken efforts to address them. Perhaps the most repeated and discussed concern was excessive speed of vessels in Rock Creek to and from the marina. At the outset, we respectfully contend the vessel speed has no relevance to whether this rezone request of this waters should be granted. However, the neighbors stated that it's a concern of theirs, so Mr. Giglio asked me to investigate. I learned that since at least 1979, the county has designated all of Rock Creek as idle speed, no wake, ISNW, the slowest speed in the speed ranges promulgated by the Fish and Wildlife. However, Fish and Wildlife has since preempted regulation of navigable waters. It has exclusive authority to determine speed zones on navigable waterways. And the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, designates Rock Creek as slow speed, minimum wake, a little bit faster than the idle speed, no wake. Regardless of the speed designation, I toured Rock Creek personally on my own boat and noticed that there are no official vessel speed zones anywhere within or at the entrance to Rock Creek. I know from prior experience in boating, they used to be there. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they got washed away in a storm or something, but there are none today as you enter Rock Creek. So we contacted Fish and Wildlife back in early 2022 to ask them about the speed designation and lack of signs. We spoke to Captain Yanez and Lieutenant Lynn. They responded that in March of 2022, they drove through Rock Creek in an unmarked vessel and witnessed no problems, no excessive speeds. Moreover, they emphasized, one, that there were no watercraft-caused manatee deaths in Rock Creek. Two, there had been no boating accidents in Rock Creek. And three, there had been no complaints to Fish and Wildlife about vessel speed in Rock Creek. Therefore, Fish and Wildlife informed us that they are disinclined on their own to change the speed zone or post any additional signage. Not to be discouraged, I then researched state law to try to find out any other ways we could try to get Rock Creek designated as idle speed, no wake by Fish and Wildlife. I discovered one statutory section that recognizes the possibility of ISNW designations 300 feet on each side of blind turns in a narrow creek. In my opinion, we have two such blind turns coming into Rock Creek. So I drafted this letter in May and sent it to the county. Essentially, it asked the county to approach Fish and Wildlife, which again has exclusive control over speeds in navigable waters, and to request ISNW zones around the blind turns. The law does not allow private property owners such as Mr. Giglio to make such requests, but it does permit local governments like the county to do so. So as we sit here today, Mr. Giglio personally has done everything he can on this issue. We fully support any efforts by the county to continue its push for the ISNW zones, and my client has offered to bear all the cost of installing and maintaining any approved speed zone signs in Rock Creek. It's my understanding that county staff has made efforts in this regard. They have engaged with Fish and Wildlife, but I hear that staff has received the same chilly reaction that I did from them. Moreover, back in July of 2022, the County Commission did authorize staff to engage a consulting firm to study Rock Creek in this regard. This past January, a firm did submit a proposal to gather data on boat speeds in Rock Creek. The cost of the Rock Creek Boat Speed Survey is $24,000. I'm not aware of whether staff has accepted that proposal, but I can say that based on my experience, our experience with Fish and Wildlife, I'm not sure the survey will persuade Fish and Wildlife to do anything other than leave Rock Creek as a slow speed, minimum wake speed zone. At the second neighborhood information meeting in July 2022, we made several other offers to the Brookside neighbors after hearing their concerns, conditioned on the rezone being approved, of course, and here they are. We are to ensure that access to and from their docks is not impeded, and that existing docks along that southern shoreline will not be extended any further north into the basin. Freedom Boat Club will install 2 cameras within the Marina Basin to monitor the boat activity there, and that has been done. Freedom Boat Club is to explore cooperating with Mr. Harms. He lives in a house right there at the entrance to Rock Creek, to install a 3rd camera at the entrance to monitor that traffic just entering Rock Creek. Freedom Boat Club will send a manned vessel to the entrance of Rock Creek to monitor activity at anticipated high use times, and they are doing so. We will offer 10 additional cameras to property owners along Harbor Lane, right there along the entrance, first come, first serve. And the reason you're seeing the reference to cameras over and over again is there was a concern relayed to us that the boats go by and it's too late for them to actually capture the name of the boat or who it is to report to Freedom Boat Club that that particular member is not behaving properly. So these cameras, if you're familiar with them, they actually can catch a video when they detects motion, and that video can then be sent along and essentially memorializes the event, allowing Freedom Boat Club to implement their disciplinary measures, which they have in place. They can suspend and even revoke a membership if they see that members are not performing as they should on the waters. We have offered one wet slip to a marine law enforcement vessel. Again, just a mere, well, that will actually increase patrol activity in Rock Creek, and just the mere vision of a law enforcement vessel there, we believe will have a deterrent effect. As I mentioned before, liveaboards are prohibited to moor at the wet slips or anchor in the basin, and personal watercraft are also prohibited to moor at the wet slips. When the Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously back in May, they recommended that each of these offers be made conditions of the approval. In addition, they recommended another condition, that the number of vessels permitted in the marina be limited to the number of slips. Allow me to explain. There currently exists 39 numbered slips in the marina plan along that southern shoreline, but the Freedom Boat Club operates more than that number from this location currently. So how can this be? Freedom Boat Club's typical boat length ranges from 20 to 25 feet long. It can't get much bigger than that because you run aground or you can't get under the fixed bridges coming in and out of Naples Bay. But some of the numbered dock slips, those 39 numbered dock slips along the southern shoreline, greatly exceed that length. Right here, those 4 piers are more than 63 feet in length. So they can handle 2 or 3 of Freedom Boat Club's typical boats. We are aware of no document or permit condition that limits each numbered slip, even if a slip is more than 60 feet in length, to just one vessel. The DEP's permit allows 112 slips in these waters, and the county's Manatee Protection Plan authorizes up to 311 in the marina. So we do not believe there is any legal or technical reason why each numbered slip be limited to one vessel. Having said that, one boat, one slip is our goal. That's why we're here, trying to get additional slips added to the Western Basin. Accordingly, as I stated earlier, we have no objection to this condition being placed on a rezone approval. That concludes my initial presentation. I do request the opportunity of rebuttal after public comments if warranted, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Mr. Miller, how many public comments?
We have one registered speaker at this time.
Let's hear from that person.
Nicholas Thomas.
I'd like to withdraw.
Okay.
All right. That's all we have, sir.
So I guess we open it up to some questions. I had just one quick question. The cameras are just sort of self-monitored. There's not like a security station with a security person in there watching the camera. Like you said, they're motion cameras. You see something, then somebody can go back and get it, right? So they're on autopilot, correct?
Right, it's reactive in that sense, not
And that and that whole list that you put up there of all the sort of wants or desires by folks, you've agreed to all of that across the board, right?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to get the clarity on that.
In addition to the one boat, one slip
Yes, sir.
recommendation from Planning Commission.
Okay. Commissioner Colwell, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is in my district, and this ball started rolling way before I became commissioner, and I had the opportunity to speak to the community of Brookside and yourself on several occasions. And, early on in onset, and I think you answered a lot of these questions, and what the community was concerned about was definitely the speed of the boats, the opportunity that people come in as rentals, which is more of a club, so this isn't like these are rental boats that are changing hands with different people that have no experience. These are people that belong to the club, and they take training. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. Freedom Boat Club actually requires training before they allow any member to actually step onto a boat and go out in the water, and that's on land training, and then they do training in the vessel as well for navigation training.
Yeah, and I know it was one of the biggest concerns, and you had talked and addressed with the cameras and answered Commissioner LaCastro that they're motion sensed, and it's basically so if a citizen that lives in this community sees a boat not behaving properly in the waterways and it captures it, now they documented the vessel's number, the hull number, and the time it went by, and they know exactly what member was operating that boat, and they can address the issue. So.
And that was important because what we were hearing from the neighbors was they would get a he said, she said. You might get a phone call from a neighbor in Brookside saying, oh, this boat just went by speeding. And then the member gets to the dock, and then the member says, oh, no, I wasn't. So you get into that kind of unnecessary, the cameras will just facilitate monitoring and allow the true speeders to be dealt with appropriately.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, I mean, I worked in that area for 20 years, you know, for the sheriff's department. And as long as I can remember, that's always been a marina. And those covered slips were there for as long as I can remember, up until sometime after Hurricane Irma, I believe, between there, 2006, 2010. Wilma, I'm sorry, not Irma. That they disappeared. And, you know, for whatever reason, I don't know, but I just know that I always thought that was a marina. And when it came to me to find out that was residential property underwater, I thought it was a mistake, you know, so, and, you know, I definitely feel you addressed a lot of the concerns and environmental concerns too, that's been dredged twice in the last 2 decades. So, you know, and as that arises for the benefit of the owner, he's going to have to look in the future, because when this does build up with silt and things like that, and in the process, from what I understand, when they do dredge it, they have to test it at the same time, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I have to say I feel satisfied with what I was presented here today. So I'd like to make a motion.
Wait a second.
We got 2 speakers.
I'm
We got
sorry.
Commissioner McDaniel and then Commissioner Saunders.
We'll let you make the motion in a second after I'm done.
Commissioner McDaniel.
I wasn't able, you addressed it a little bit, but I want to clarify. Property owners changed, businesses changed, so on and so forth. And you talked about permitting for 112 boats. There was a reduction of 25 from what used to be there, but then there was discussion about up to 312 would still allow you to be, or 300 and something would still allow you to be designated as a preferred. So my suggestion is that we, as a portion of this condition, similar to what the Planning Commission said, that we limit the actual amount of boats per this approval, or up to 120. And that would then allow for the owner of the property to sell the property. The next person coming in knows what they're getting. The neighborhood knows what they're getting, and we're not opening Pandora's box, if you will, for another business owner to double the amount of boats that are currently in there.
May I comment on that?
Well, sure.
I would respectfully request that condition, which is not necessarily objectionable, be limited to wet slips. Because the dry land can be put to use as it was for decades with dry storage, where you have racks of boats that are lifted and placed into the water. But in terms of the number of slips, and that's where we heard in the past 234 total slips were permitted at one time. That was 137 wet and the balance dry.
Yeah,
I just don't want to tie Mr. Giglio's hands on the upland use.
If I'm not mistaken, is that use permitted currently under his existing zoning for the dry slips?
It is.
Okay, so, and I'm fine with the wet slips if we limit it to no more than 120 is a number that I just arbitrarily picked, but, and then second, with regard to Commissioner Kowal's motion, I'm gonna suggest that he grab the reins with regard to working with FWC and ensure that the speed limit signs are adjusted appropriately so that we maintain as low a speed in that area as possible. I'll volunteer him for that as well.
And I had also had a conversation with you and the owner, Mr. Gugliani, that you know, being a good neighbor, I think on the marina itself and getting with the boat club and have their own stipulations on idle speed only when going to and from, as being part of their rules and regulations. And I think you did say they did put a sign.
Yes, so that is Freedom Boat Club's rule. They instruct all members that it's idle speed, notwithstanding Fish and Wildlife's designation as slow speed. Freedom Boat Club tells all members that it's idle speed and have in fact posted private signs on our property stating idle speed. These are not official Fish and Wildlife signs, but it's the private property owner doing what he can to minimize boat speed in the creek.
Yeah, and I'll get on the state, but I think at this time, I think being a good neighbor and that being put in place is it's beneficial for everybody.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually going to urge our staff to work with the Fish and Wildlife to accomplish that. And I have a letter that was presented to me. The original letter was addressed to Chris DeMarco, Senior Environmental Specialist, which really outlines what they are proposing. If you could provide Commissioner Colwell a copy of that letter, because I've kind of marked up on mine, but that will give you some guidance as to what they were asking for.
Absolutely.
I see nobody else lit up. I'll just add, and I've had really great success with our county staff working with Fish and Wildlife on things that we never got a return phone call on, and then a couple of people, to include Trinity Scott back there and a few others that, brought up a serious issue to the attention, and then we did get action. So I have no doubt that with Commissioner Colwell's involvement, working with the county staff and you'll get the proper signage there. And that seems to be the only sort of loose end. But having said that, do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, and what Commissioner McDaniel had stated, that put in the motion to limit the wet slips up to a 120 and leave the upland as it is, but I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to approve and by Commissioner Colwell, a second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 9B. This is a recommendation to approve an ordinance rezoning property to establish the Dunkin' Donuts Collier Boulevard C PUD to allow up to 10,000 square feet of certain C1, C2, and C3 uses on 1.98 plus or minus acres of property located on the west side of Collier Boulevard, 350 plus minus feet north of Pine Ridge Road in Section 15, Township 49 South, Range 26 East, Collier County, Florida. With that, ex parte from the commissioners, please.
Commissioner Colwell,
I have no communications.
Commissioner Saunders,
I have no disclosure, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Commissioner Hall,
None at all.
Commissioner McDaniel,
I have emails.
okay, and I have no disclosures on 9B.
With that, participants need to be sworn in by the court reporter, please. We'll begin with the applicant.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Wayne Arnold, professional planner with Grady Minor and Associates, representing the applicant. We're here for about a 2-acre rezone, and I have Michael Dellett from our office, professional engineer. Jim Banks is our traffic consultant, and Marco Espinar is our biologist on the project. So this project is located in one of your neighborhood centers in the Golden Gate Area Master Plan. It's a vacant parcel located between the VFW and a small strip plaza and existing gas station at the corner of Pine Ridge and Collier Boulevard. The neighborhood center allows a full gamut of C1 through C3 commercial uses. We're proposing a maximum 10,000 square feet of C1, 2, and 3, and one of the inline anchor tenants is scheduled to be Dunkin' Donuts. We've represented our client who owns all the franchises for Dunkin' around the community, and we are proposing the C1, 2, and 3 with the allowance for drive-through for that Dunkin' Donuts. We have the neighborhood information meeting. This project is served by a road, Neff's Way, which if you've been around a while, you know where that is off of Pine Ridge Road. It's a private road. The neighbors were concerned about parking that exists on that road today, some trash and things of that nature. And I think the Planning Commission, when they heard that, rightly so, agreed that we're going to have parking to code and we're not really going to contribute to that problem. Members of the VFW were here. We agreed to put a sign at the Neff's Way entrance indicating no right turn. We're part of what I would call we affectionately called it the jug handle when I was helping the county and the applicant that owned the property. You may remember the Brooks family. They worked with the county to create this little slip lane off of Collier Boulevard to serve the gas station. Even though it cost them a little bit of money to buy some of their property, it saved a lot of business damages for your right-of-way taking back in the day. So we have access to that frontage road, if you will. We don't really need the Neff's Way to certainly get to the VFW. I didn't see any speakers. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. It seems fairly straightforward.
Any public speakers, Mr. Miller?
No, sir.
Commissioner McDaniel.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, motion for approval, I will second it. So I got a motion for approval by Commissioner McDaniel, a second by Commissioner LaCastro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that brings us to item 11, County Manager's Report. Item 11A is a recommendation to approve the proposed Collier County state and federal legislative and administrative priorities for 2024. Mr. John Mullins, your Director of Communications, Government, and Public Affairs, will begin the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, John Mullins, your Director of Communications, Government, and Public Affairs. And you have before you in your packets this morning the proposed 2024 state and federal legislative and administrative priorities, basically our marching orders for the next legislative cycle. Now, this is the first priorities document produced by our new Legislative Affairs Coordinator, Bridget Corcoran, who is here with me, who has a couple of decades of experience at the local, state, and federal levels, and who hit the ground running when she joined us in mid-July. Now, Bridget is going to take over the daily coordination of our priorities with our state and federal lobbyists. She'll be managing our departmental conduits who help us play defense against any proposed onerous legislation that may come down the pike. And she will also be on hand to assist with constituent services that may involve state and federal executive agency coordination to help remedy. And with that, I'm going to defer to Bridget to tell you a little bit more about herself and to take us through the rest of this program. And then we'll be on hand for questions. Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Bridget Corcoran, Legislative Affairs Coordinator. And I am not John Mullins, so go easy on me first meeting here, please. The priorities document was produced in conjunction with our state and federal lobbyists, county management, department staff, and of course your individual input. This list is a snapshot of what we're looking at right now. Obviously, this can change at any moment. If there's any issues that come up during the sessions, we will come back to you if there's not any instructions we can derive from this document. The format of the document, aside from the state appropriations, is just simply alphabetical. They're not in any certain order other than alphabetical. And as you may recall, this board previously approved the state appropriations aside for the one item for the $3.6 million for the construction of EMS Fire Station 74, which will serve the unincorporated and eastern portion of the county. All these projects were presented by the chairman to the delegation meeting on September 11th, which also included that EMS project. So given the fact that you were previously given the document for your feedback, input, and items that you wanted to add, we're happy to answer any questions you may have on any of the items. Otherwise, we're simply asking for approval today and for authorization for the chair to draft any needed correspondences on behalf of the board for any of the issues outlined in the document.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Are you related to any other Corcorans that we know?
No,
Okay.
I'm coming from Buffalo, New York, so.
Well, okay.
Never admit it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to make a motion for approval.
I got a motion for approval by Commissioner McDaniel. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Got a second by Commissioner Saunders. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Just so you know, my motion for approval was conditioned upon that answer.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the hard work on this. Appreciate it. Okay.
Commissioners, item 11B is a recommendation to provide insight and historical perspective to the board relating to Arts and Cultural Grants Program, and to make a recommendation for the board to approve and authorize the chairman to execute tourist development tax grant agreements for fiscal year 2023-2024 marketing grants, Category B, in the amount of $74,648, and non-county owned / operated museums, Category C2, in the amount of $750,000, approve grant award funds in the amount of a total of $824,648 for both programs, contingent upon the FY 2024 budget availability, and make a finding that these expenditures promote tourism. Mr. Paul Bierns, your tourism director, is here to present.
Good morning. For the record, Paul Bierns, Division Director of Tourism, and with me also is John Melicky, in case there's any questions. John is our Manager of Arts and Culture and leads all of our grants initiatives. Thank you, Troy, for the presentation, and I'll move along. There's a lot of meat here. I'm just trying to give you an overarching look of how we have proceeded over the years. And this is a program that has spanned over well over 20 years under the guidance in the county ordinance. The intent all along has been to support initiatives promoting tourism, basically putting heads in beds and overnight visitation. This is a reimbursable grant, so based on the performance at the end of the year, these are then provided. The funding is actually generated out of the tourist development tax. And just for a little bit of an insight, and it's important to kind of understand where we are today, based on the board direction in 2021, they encouraged the tourism division to really amp up and align the arts and culture community surrounding a singular year-long Hispanic arts and culture event, which is known as Arte Viva. To do that, we jump-started the program for a one-year period by reaching into the reserves and increasing it by $200,000, and we're starting to narrow that back as that program has been successful and launched. So there are two grants programs. The first one is termed as a non-county owned museum. The intent of this is to develop and execute marketing campaigns and programming, possessing, again, that possibility of driving destination tourism. The other is marketing grant. The intent of that is marketing and communications campaigns surrounding festivals, events, cultural activities. So where does the money come from? It's part of the tourist development tax collection. I've highlighted in yellow here the two areas. The top one is the smaller Category B marketing program. It's actually carved out of our aggregate CVB marketing and promotion budget. The non-county museums portion, which you see on the bottom area, that is the larger one. That is actually part of the museums grants. This graph right here designates how the 5% tourist development tax, each penny is designated, and by design, that 1.91% is designated for the non-county owned museum grants. Now, I guess this is probably the most important and enlightening part of this. Turning back time when this first started, under the non-county museums, the predominant focus was within capital initiatives, things such as the Freedom Memorial that helped fund that, things like restoring gatehouses surrounding the Palm cottages. Again, that was early on in the 2000s. Many of these organizations that we're talking about now either didn't exist or were just being built, such as Golisano Children's Museum. But somewhere around 2007, there was a lot of programming that was coming out. And so around that 2007 point, Focus started supporting some of these initiatives and these organizations at that time. Similarly, on the marketing side, on the marketing Category B grant. Early on, it included things such as wayfinding kiosks at Friends of Fakahatchee for capital expenditure, sports, bringing in youth sports, amateur sports, also meetings. Meetings were becoming pretty significant within the community and our hotels, so that was funded. And then, of course, festivals and grants. So a big shift change around 2019. A couple things were happening. We were embracing the arrival of the sports complex. So we knew that we would have to put a lot more incentive into bringing the amateur sports and the soccer, lacrosse, and football. So those funds started migrating over to within the CVB budget. Similarly, meetings and conventions with mega facilities such as the JW Marriott and the Ritz-Carlton, all bringing significant meetings. That was also embraced within our overarching CVB budget. You see on the far right-hand side, these are kind of the core base of these grants that have consisted through the entire period. Want to take a look over that 20-odd years, if you will. Under the non-county museums, a total of 18 organizations have amassed the distribution of about $8.6 million were awarded. Under the marketing grant, the Category B, 20 organizations have received about $1.4 million total. While we have the entire list, I just took a look, just assembled the top 6, if you will. So give you an example how to read this. On the right-hand side, top, the non-county museums. Over a course of 15 years, the Naples Botanical Garden has received $2.8 million aggregate, about $189,000 on an annual basis if you really average it across the boards. And you see it trickle down from there. A lot has also happened in just the last 2 years to try to create a methodology and efficiency. We've created an online system, so the application is very, very tracked. Everything's apples to apples. It's all automated and in one place. Marketing plans are required of all applicants to make sure that they have a detailed marketing plan, strategy, target audience for our sense of comfort that it will put heads in beds and drive visitation. And then visitor analytics are required way more than we ever did before. In fact, we align them with our research agency, Downs and St. Germain, to make sure that the best practices are engaged when they are capturing these numbers and the legitimacy of them. How the awards is secured, we actually have a committee of team members across the county that review them, score them. You see the criteria here very much on the guidance, if you will, of our procurement department of tourism impact, marketing plan impacts, and such. And then from that, we make a recommendation, average them out, and bring it to the TDC for approval, and then finally to the Board of County Commissioners for your review and approval as well. The grants guidelines themselves, the recipients must submit the final report showcasing all of the results for that reimbursement. All activity must take place during the fiscal year, October 1 through the 30th. And through the whole period, tourism is fully aligned with them, encouraging them through training sessions, making sure that they are tracking the results very, very methodically so that we don't find out in the last stage that we should have guided them a little more efficiently early on. So there's a lot of data collection that happens, and we are aligned with them at all steps. And then for 2024, the team, we are already looking at crafting some parameters, limiting repeating or recurring projects. Now, that doesn't mean that a recipient would be part of that, but rather if you had, and I'm just going to make it up for the absurdity of it, if it was a pet festival, it would only be X amount of years before it weans out, and it would not be 10, 15 years that we would support such a festival. So we're trying to figure out the best guidelines and guardrails to put some sort of parameters on that. And then, of course, for full disclosure, funding of these grant programs and awards is certainly subject to the Board of County Commissioners, and the board has the discretion to determine whether to fund these grants. Hopefully, I've provided a little bit of historical insight. There is a lot of legs to it, but definitely here to answer any questions, myself and John Melke.
Okay. Mr. Miller, do we have public speakers before we go to questions?
Yes, sir. We have 10.
Okay. Why don't we hear from public speakers first, and then I know I have some questions.
I'll remind our speakers to queue up at both podiums, please. Christine Noonan will be followed by Michael Monroe Etheridge. Right here.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Christine Noonan. I'm a native of Naples, Florida, and in my lifetime, I have witnessed the moving of the county seat, the first bank, the first hospital, the first library, the beginning of the Naples Art Association, which was started by George E. Rogers, which now his entire studio is at the Collier Historic Museum. I'm a member of the Naples Art District and United Arts Collier. Naples has always attracted influential people and who have invested in our community. Now we're on a global stage, not only for our beaches and natural wildernesses, we offer a rich cultural community, music and dance, theater, art, opera, museums, art institutions, art districts. They're equal to our neighbors, Palm Beach, Miami, Wynwood, Sarasota, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and many more. It's taken 70-plus years to build this world-class cultural city that offers the best for our visitors. I've just visited the newly remodeled Naples Airport. This gorgeous airport is now displaying the first art exhibit for our visitors, coming in from destinations from all over the world. They're welcomed by a taste of our arts and culture, hosted by United Arts Collier at the Naples Airport. And I am, please allow this very thriving city to continue to expand in its cultural arts. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Michael Monroe Etheridge, and he'll be followed by Alice Van Arsdale.
And maybe remind them to go to both podiums.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
As Picasso said, art washes away from our souls the dust of everyday life. My name is Michael Monroe Etheridge, and I've been a professional artist for many years. Now living in Naples, I'm currently on the board of the Naples Art District. I've been asked to show my paintings in fine art galleries around the country: Aspen, Carmel, Sedona, Santa Fe, Newberry Street in Boston, and now here on Fifth Avenue in Naples. Since then, I've gotten a working studio in the Naples Art District. I do know how important art is to tourism and in our personal lives and in the growth of our community. I'm here to ask for assistance from our commissioners for all of the arts in Naples by the financial backing with the grants that are available. And today I want to share a few words why it's extremely important for all of these arts, the visual arts, the literary arts, the performing arts. I've never been more proud to have my studio in here, and with so many numerous working studios in the Naples Art District. Other great art destinations such as Santa Fe, the Chelsea Art District in New York, and the Wynwood District in Miami, all of which I have visited. At our last business meeting in the Naples Art District this spring, we had over 100 artists, ceramic workers, sculptors, glass blowers, signing up for membership in our Naples Art District here, and I'm one of those for the upcoming 2024 season. But to do the things we need the financial backing. Today I'm asking for the support and funding to help not just the Naples Art District, but for all areas of art within our entire city and county. When you support the arts, you're saying, I support culture, I support prestige and a great quality of life. This financial support you can give us will influence and encourage outside tourists and populations to move here, which will wonderfully impact our economy. The property values will go up, local real estate markets will prosper, and the tax revenue from these local government projects can be reinvested in public services, infrastructure, and educational programs. So in closing, supporting the art removes the dust because it allows us to be a part of something good, like our family, our church, the Boy Scouts. Art does this by creating something beautiful like laughter, joy, smiles, and friendship, and a stronger community. With these grants and the support, we'll remove the dust. I'm asking all the commissioners that are here to help us do just that. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Alice Van Arsdale. She'll be followed by Jonathan, is this Forrester?
Good morning. My name is Alice Van Arsdale. I am the Vice President of Development for Artist Naples. I am also a Naples native. I grew up here. I grew up taking advantage of the wonderful arts and cultures opportunities that are provided here, from the Naples Players to Artist Naples to Naples Art and beyond. And it's really what springboarded my career, my studies. I moved away. I lived up north for 10 years. And while I was away, the cultural organizations here, by the support of the individuals, the government, and on all levels, blossomed here. And that is really what inspired me to come back. In my role at Artist Naples, I oversee fundraising efforts for the organization. Our financial health depends on the generosity and commitment of individuals, foundations, corporations, and government at all levels. At the heart of Artist Naples' existence, and every nonprofit represented here and beyond, is the dedication to serve. Serving the community by crafting and providing and celebrating cultural experiences and learning opportunities. The county citizens and visitors are able to take advantage of this at all ages and backgrounds who might not otherwise have access to it. One of the core priorities of my role, of course, is to raise funds in support of these programs. But I really see the first priority of my role is to forge and strengthen partnerships. We succeed or fail by the strength of these partnerships because they stand for belief in our mission. They create a bridge from our services to the community and allow them to access it. Partnerships forged in belief are expressed by intertwining means. This is participation, advocacy, and contributions. We haven't expressly heard some of the opinions from the commissioners on this tourist grant program. We're left to sort of draw some conclusions as well as sort of the feelings for this program, and mentioned in the last meeting as well where we talked about this subject. But we do get the sense that there are considerations for decreasing this program. And beyond the proposition of decreasing the financial support, and as we all nonprofits function on a hair's breadth of success in terms of our, financial profit, what mainly concerns me is the resulting decrease that may occur if funding decreases. Then what might happen to the participation and advocacy of the county? Undermining the strength of our partnership decreases the belief in this mission. I also believe that there is a little bit of a myth in Naples that because we are a community of very generous individuals that it's not needed to support by other means, and that's not the case. In fact, I think you should align with these individuals who are supporting us. I would just like to leave you very quickly with my gratitude for the opportunity to speak here. I appreciate the debate. We should be having these debates, and we should be justifying every dollar of the public's money that we spend. But I want to leave you with my belief in this partnership, my gratitude for it, and the impact that we can create together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Jonathan Forster. He'll be followed by Elijah Dawn.
Good morning. For the record, Jonathan Forster. I'm the CEO of the Golisano Children's Museum of Naples. You guys some of you have heard me say this a bunch of times, but to me, the arts and culture is the thing that differentiates us between a lot of our competitive tourism areas in the state of Florida. Destin doesn't have a children's museum. It doesn't have the Artist Naples. It doesn't have the Naples Art Association. It doesn't have a botanical garden like we have. And I think continuing to support those organizations continues to support the breadth of tourism that we have here in our community. We are not just a pretty place to come and spend a little time outside, but we're a place to really invest in, to spend time to really get to know. And I think that is the thing that creates deep and lasting, impactful travel experiences, and the kind of travel experiences that make people want to come back again and again and again and again. And I think that's what the recipients of these grants do for our community. And I think that, if you had, Clark here from the TDC to tell you that his best customers are the ones that want to come back, the ones that want to invest in our community. And I think we help them, and our tourism partners do that. Obviously, this is an opportunity to explore what tourism tax money should be used for. And I think there are a lot of great ideas from people throughout the community on how we should do that. But I think what we forget is that it can't just be about the beaches. It can't just be about the Everglades, it has to be about more, or we will become a one-trick pony. And I don't think that that's what our community is, and I don't think that's what we want to be. If you look at communities to our north, for example, Sarasota, which collects less TDT than Collier County does, but spends 3 times the amount on the arts and culture grants. And they do that because they've realized that's a prime draw for them. They're the ones that are advertising their arts and culture in all of the northern festivals and magazines throughout the summer, so that when winter comes and people don't want to be cold, but they still want to experience great art, they know to come to Florida. And unfortunately, they know to come to Sarasota instead of Collier County. So I think that we can do a better job of promoting the arts with more investment. I would hate to see us pull back from what we've already accomplished, and I would love to see us move forward. I can speak for a lot of us in saying that we are incredibly grateful for the support. And as you saw in that slide that Mr. Behrens put up earlier, the Children's Museum has been a great beneficiary of the support of this tax revenue. And we might not be here without it. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate all your hard work and dedication to the county. And I hope that you will see it to yourselves to support continuing this program. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Your next speaker is Alicia Dawn. She'll be followed by Kelly Kirk.
Hello, my name is Alicia Dawn, and I'm the Executive Director of United Arts Collier. I want to say thank you for allowing me to speak today and for your work in the community. It is greatly appreciated. I want to speak to the importance of the arts on both a personal and a professional level. Personally, I grew up in Naples and was very fortunate to have wonderful access to the arts with great organizations like Artists Naples, getting to perform there as a child. Also, Fleshman Park, ballet classes there, which led me to a career in ballet that brought me around the world performing, and then also working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But I missed it here. This is such an incredible community, and I was grateful to be able to come back and to engage in the arts, which is my area of expertise. I greatly believe in the value of the arts in that personal way, and that the arts gave my life purpose and meaning. But we also know how they do serve the community on an individual level, with things like the impact that they have on mental well-being, alleviating symptoms of things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, which is particularly important for some of our most vulnerable populations, including at-risk youth, which we serve, as well as seniors and veterans. It is also shown to impact educational outcomes. Children with arts education are 5 times less likely to drop out of school, 4 times more likely to be academically recognized, 4 times more likely to pursue a secondary degree, as well as a collective. The arts are an industry here to the tune of $108 million, according to our last economic impact study. They have about 3,000 full-time jobs that are created in the community, and also about 183 arts and culture organizations here. So, we are economic impact makers. We are drivers. And so when you give to the arts, it's not just charity, it's an investment, really, in our community, because the arts do serve our community. And these funds are so critical to our organization's ability to function and ability to reach others with the message of what we do here, which is truly special, inspiring and elevating for this community, for our residents and our tourists that we want to share this work with. So I want you to consider that, please, as an investment in this wonderful place, and urge you to consider strongly helping us obtain these funds. They make a tremendous difference to us and all those we serve. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Kelly Kirk. She'll be followed by Holly Dudley.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kelly Kirk. I'm a Collier County business owner, a director of the Florida Stonecarvers Association, a native Floridian, native Naples, and on the board for the Everglades Seafood Festival, which is why I'm here today. I stand before you to encourage you to follow through on the previous decision of supporting and approving the TDC's grants for the upcoming year. I'm sure many of you know how many blood, sweat, tears, hours, labor goes into each of these events in Collier County. Specifically for the Everglades Seafood Festival, myself and the other directors work year-round at volunteer cost. so we don't make any income off of it like many here. Our goal is to bring light to the Everglades City community and surrounding areas, support them with the funds that the festival brings in, and highlight the importance of the working waterfront in our area, specifically the commercial stone crabbers and fishermen. 2024 will be the 54th annual Everglades Seafood Festival. Many locals know about it and already plan to attend, but our goal is to reach outside of the community here. This grant allows us to advertise in the surrounding counties, states, and even as far as Europe. We advertise with social media, radio stations, magazines, both pleasure and FWC publications, and many more. We learned last year through marketing analytics, visitors plan their vacations around this festival, and these visitors come back annually, thus contributing to the county in many ways year after year. Accommodations book up quickly, restaurants see the uptick, eco-tours and charter captains fill their schedules. Commercial fishermen are working tirelessly to provide the fresh catches for this festival. Thank you for the time to speak. We hope to see you all at the festival and encourage your support.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Holly Dudley. She'll be followed by Kathleen Von Bergen.
Good morning. My name's Holly Dudley. I'm a director for the Florida Stone Crabbers Association and coordinator for the Everglades Seafood Festival. I'm also the president of Holly's Hope. I help people get into rehab facilities for drug addiction. I believe in giving back. I believe in charity. I believe in helping your community when you're given the opportunity to. And this festival fell in our lap year before last, and we were given the opportunity to take it on. It's a 3-day event that brings around 70,000 people in the Everglades City area. As most of y'all know, there's only about 500 or 600 of us down there year round. So that's a big number for us. But it is a 3-day event that can float our community all year long, considering we don't have many children down there. But there are a lot of needs. We provide trade scholarships for all applying seniors. We provide Letterman's jackets, prom, homecoming, food bank donations, material for hurricane victims, many other needs, many needs in the community. I come to you today in the hopes we'll be gifted this grant. It allows us to advertise and market this festival throughout the United States without taking away from the profits of the festival that we use to give back into the community. So my hope is that you guys will consider gifting this to us. And we have the blessing of the Stone Crab Fleet, September 30th. I think we've invited all you guys via email. We'd like to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your next speaker is Kathleen Van Bergen. She'll be followed by Hyla Crane.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kathleen Van Bergen, CEO and President for Artists Naples. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you again. And on behalf of all of the arts organizations here, we are grateful for the decades of support that this partnership has given each of our organizations. I say partnership because there are expectations on both sides of this relationship. With these grants that we accept, we commit to being good stewards of the dollars that you allocate to us. There are expectations of incredible programming that will drive tourists. There are expectations of documentation for how we spend. Ultimately, you are the judge. You do not reimburse unless we are indeed good stewards of every dollar. These grants programs not only support world-class arts activities and education activities that drive tourism here, but we also are able to market the entire community outside of beautiful Collier County. I love hearing the stories, and I know I shared it at the last meeting, but it is a regular discussion where someone will say, I first came to Naples to attend X, Y, or Z, or to see this exhibition, or the beaches and the golf, and eventually they become residents. They say they can find beach, golf, sunshine all around our beautiful state, but they're choosing Collier County because of our commitment and the characteristic that defines us as part of arts and culture community. I speak as one of the largest organizations in the arts and culture community, and I also speak as one of the larger employers in Collier County. Artists Naples was grown literally from the sand up, and I respect all of the business decisions you have to make because I now have to make those decisions for an almost $40 million operating budget and over $240 million in assets. That only underscores how much I value each and every dollar that is allocated to support our mission. our mission to bring world-class arts and culture, but also to serve the student population and young population. At this point, we bring over 800 events, almost 50% of which are free to this community. Annually, we welcome over 300,000 visitors onto our cultural campus, 45,000 of which are students, and we know that population is growing. And I think it is obvious that this is a value. Arts and culture is a value to our citizens and our visitors. So as we celebrate the centennial of Collier County, please continue to support this arts and culture grant for marketing and programming. It has become a defining characteristic of our community. And if there are expectations to redefine, to deepen, I look forward to our continued partnership, and I look forward to meeting the expectations of these precious dollars that you trust us with. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Hyla Crane. She'll be followed by Christina Heuser.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Hyla Crane, and I'm the Executive Director at the Marco Island Center for the Arts and the Art Center Theater. It's my belief that great artists, both visual and performing, find their inspiration from the very depths of the soul. The Lord speaks through them because without him, there is no creation. And this is a significant reason why I have devoted my life to working in the arts. You have heard from those who spoke before me about the economic benefits of the arts, that the arts mean business, that it benefits tourism and the citizens of Collier County, and that raising the arts and culture up to the light benefits the reputation of Collier County. No one wants to live in a cultural wasteland. But I know you all appreciate the value of arts and culture in our community. The question is, why should the county continue to support? My organization is on Marco Island, and in the last year, 2 theaters and 1 arts organization folded. They are no more. We picked up those pieces, and the support we received through the TDC funding was literally essential for us to make that possible. I know that the county faces many pressing financial issues. You all have been laser focused on improving the lives of all of us in Collier County through your insights, hard work, and determination. Thank you. It's obvious that you weigh all issues carefully and fairly. I respect that your decision concerning funding for non-county museums and marketing will be prudent and will serve the community's best interest. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Christina Heuser. She will be followed on Zoom by Tricia Griffin.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to present this concern to you. It's just by happenstance. But I have a concern about TDC marketing. And this is something that was actually brought to my attention by another local elected official. But, I'm not going to name them because I don't think they wanted to bring it to you directly. So the TDC is actually targeting LGBTQ visitors and groups and events. And I'm sorry that I didn't plan this, so I'm not able to display this better. But this is their website. So it shows like a same-sex couple sort of nuzzling up to one another. It says, "We're proud to welcome you to paradise." And then if you scroll down, more like intimate moments between same-sex couples. The Naples Pride Center, which is a known supporter and promoter of gender dysphoria in children, more pride flags and things like that. And down here, we even have same-sex couple with children. And I don't think that's consistent with the values of our community, and I know there are different opinions about that, obviously, but it's certainly not something that tax dollars should be going to support. And this was actually brought, and they also actually have a staff member who's dedicated to marketing to this type of group and event. And this was brought to my attention when there was some outrage about the Naples Pride Fest in downtown Naples. And it was said to me, you guys are coming here attacking us for this, but the county's actually marketing to these types of events and soliciting to bring them here to the county. And I thought that was a very valid point. And I imagine most of you, if not all of you, are probably not aware of this, but I would like it to be addressed. And I don't think any marketing fund should be given until their marketing plan is revised to eliminate this. Thank you.
Your final registered speaker on Zoom is Tricia Griffith. Ms. Griffith, you're being asked to unmute yourself if you'll do so at this time. Miss Griffith. Tricia Griffin, I am prompting you to unmute. She's not unmuting, sir, so I guess that's all I can do at this point.
Mr. Behrens, anything you'd like to address that you heard from any of the comments of any of the public speakers?
I think the one thing that was represented is that arts and culture is one of the many fibers of what this destination is. We have some incredible, rich restaurants, retailers. The beaches are amazing, but it's just a piece of the fiber overarching.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Hall.
There we are, ready.
Yes, I had asked this to be pulled off the consent agenda in the other meeting, and I wanted it brought forward for the history, and thank you, Paul, for the history. You did a great job with that. I want to thank every speaker because your message was heartfelt, it was sincere, and you're fighting hard. You're fighting hard for these grants, but at the same time, they are grants, they are gifts, they're public monies. And so in staff yesterday, I was wanting to ask I understand what the statutes are and what the TDC monies are allowed to go to as far as the arts, as far as non-county museums, as far as for marketing purposes. But do we have some other options that are actually public assets that these monies could go to as well?
Commissioners, yes, we have a robust program for both our beaches and our beach park facilities. Probably one of the most important uses of the TDC dollars is our beach renourishment and beach maintenance programs, as well as supporting those beach park facilities.
Specifically, what could, Barefoot Beach, Vanderbilt Beach, Clam Pass, Wiggins, blah, 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 blah.
Yes, sir. So we not only maintain those beaches, including all of the permit requirements, but we also renourish those beaches, and then again we maintain the beach park facilities. So that's the public amenities at those facilities. We do have partners in the city of Naples that do get some money from the TDC dollars as well, to take care of their areas of the beach under their responsibility, as well as their beach park facilities. And that's something we're actually actively exploring with them as far as the use of those dollars in light of the age of a lot of these facilities and the number of needs.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, you want to add anything?
For the record, Dan Rodriguez, your Deputy County Manager as well. Absolutely, and as you know, with the Hurricane Ian, many of those facilities that we have on those coastlines were damaged, and some of those repair work not completely get reimbursed by FEMA. So there's plenty of work to be done, and some of these facilities are 25 years old, parking lots that need to be resurfaced, as well as boardwalks that need replaced. I know Caxambas is a major boat ramp facility that needs a lot of updating, as well as Clam Pass Park, and of course Tiger Tail Beach needs a new set of restrooms and things like that. So there's plenty of work for staff to do, and with the budget constraints that we're going to see in the future, every opportunity needs to be looked at.
I mean, you caught the shameless plug for Wiggins, Barefoot, and Clam Pass.
It was.
It was shameless. I love the arts. I've been to the Children's Museum 3 or 4 times. I got the privilege of having a tour with Michael at the Arts District. I've been to Artiste Naples. I've been to the Playhouse, and truly, they're first class. They're world-class places. But here's where I question some of the grant decisions that maybe not in the past, maybe just from now for the future, because we have post-hurricane, we have public assets that need public money support. I loved the benefits that Michael explained what the arts bring. I mean, he just, it was eloquent how he just rattled off every benefit that the arts produce, and that's so true. But at the same time, each one of the arts businesses or nonprofits or each entity, they already have the incentive to promote their business. And I dare say that if we don't decide to do these grants, that they would go bankrupt or they would go under. I don't think that's true at all, not in the least. I do see where they can benefit from some of these grants, but what I'm questioning is whether should be a priority in 2023 and going into 2024 to take public monies and support private businesses. You know, where do we stop? The arts is an industry here in Collier County. So is golf. There's over 70 golf courses. We have the Chubb Seniors Golf Tournament. We have the Shark Shootout. We have the LPGA CME Tournament, and all of those promote tourism. We have the big Minto Pickleball Championships for the week. I mean, that promotes. So, you know, where do we draw the line? Where do we say, well, we can give to one, but we shouldn't give the other? But mainly, what my thoughts are, and I'm not completely opposed, but my thoughts are moving money towards public assets, improving the public assets, especially after the hurricane, especially after, I mean, I went to the beach day before yesterday in the morning. There's still no showers. I mean, there's no foot washes or anything. It's still real kind of raw down there. Now, those were city beaches that I went to, but the county beaches are the same way. It was mentioned that Naples is a world-class destination with the beaches and the restaurants and the support that we have for tourism. I agree. If I was in the arts business, I would definitely want to hang my shingle in Collier County, especially in Naples. But as far as, as where I'm battling is there is no, I've gotten emails saying, please do not defund the arts. I'm not defunding them. You can't defund something that you're not obligated to give to. These were gifts. And if we don't decide to gift that money in that direction, I don't think it would be fair for anybody to say, well, you don't believe in us or you don't want us or, you're anti this or anti that. That's not true at all. I have a responsibility to be a good steward over the public monies that come our way. And these are public monies from the tourism dollars. Well, you can say, well, Chris, Commissioner, that's what tourism dollars do. They promote tourism. I agree. But we want to promote tourism. Do we want to promote tourism in private business, or do we want to promote tourism in the public access? Well, Commissioner, people come here for the beach, but after they come here for the beach, then they come to see us. That's true. But we want our beaches and we want our public access, our public assets to be top notch. I'm not saying don't do it. These are questions that I have. I'm having trouble determining where the public money is obligated to go to private business when we have our own public assets to, and the term has been several times, invest in.
Commissioner McDaniel.
I agree. As a point, I'd like to say out loud again that these are in fact grant monies. And just because a particular applicant's been awarded a grant doesn't mean that grant is bequeathed until the budget is approved. And I want all efforts put into making that very, very clear to the folks that have applied for and then been approved for the grant to be let it be known that the budget is the budget, and that ultimately it comes before this board for its approval. So, saying it out loud is absolutely a requisite. Number two, at the Tourist Development Council, we triage with consultants, asking folks why they're coming here, so on and so forth. Maybe a little more effort can be put into sharing with this board the priorities or the rationale of why folks are visiting Collier County, and then on a percentage basis, the allocation of the grant funds in relationship to the total amount of money that we're spending for these bequeaths. because in fact they are bequeaths. And they're necessarily one-time bequeaths. It's not, just because you get it once doesn't mean that you're going to be able to be approved for it again. And I certainly look forward, and I assume it will come through the Tourist Development Council either this year or next. And I think Commissioner LaCastro, you'll be the one in the chair. I'm the current chair of the TDC right now. But that prioritization of how much and who is authorized to receive the grants is in fact going to be correlated to efficacy. We certainly want to see the expenditure of taxpayer money spent in most efficient manner that we possibly can do. So I agree with Commissioner Hall with the necessity for our public access and assets that the county currently has. But on the same token, I know we have done other grants, and then, for lack of a better term, there's been a weaning process that has come about. We supported the rodeo almost in its entirety with regard to that group, and then then have backed off the contributions to assist that organization. So, and it's become a very successful event that folks are now looking forward to because we helped with seed money to get it going. So, my personal opinion is these grants have been established, they've been vetted, we've done as much as we possibly can right now. There's more to come. I would suggest that we leave this, my particular preference is we leave this alone for now, and let it be known that there's more to come with regard to the analysis that's going to go into next year's bequeaths.
I'm gonna speak next, and then Commissioner Saunders, sir, you're on deck. I look at these grants closer to investment than a gift. I mean, and there could be some semantics here. And I've gone on record before saying, you know, if I wanted to think of the one true gift that I think that the county gave, it would be to Great Wolf Lodge. And I've said that before, but it's here nor there. But the reality is that I think this is more of investment. However, it doesn't really matter what you call it. It's money that's going to taxpayers. I agree that the public locations and all the things we talked about with our beaches should be a priority, but I think they are. So to me, it's more of balance. It's not a matter of shut this down, and nobody has said that, but everything that Mr. Rodriguez mentioned has been getting a lot of funding and repair. Yes, everything's not fully fixed. I got, Caxambas Park and Marina, that's practically got a lock on it right now that has an awful lot of work that's needed, but I think it's finding the balance. I'd agree with Commissioner McDaniels. I came in here, unless I heard something different, to agree to full funding of what's been promised in this budget, but with lots of caveats. And the caveats would be, and Mr. Behrens, you've said before, and one of the reasons why we brought you on, deep resume, you've really hit the ground running. You've brought us so many positive leadership things that you have brought to the TDC and your staff. But I think, to use Commissioner McDaniel's term, leave it alone. However, really looking for your leadership to dig through every single grant that's given, and are any of them excessive? Are any of them unneeded? We heard one time in this room that there's one or two organizations, I'm not going to name anything, that say, we'll take it if you give it, but we're not going to go out of business, like Commissioner Hall said, if we didn't get it. Okay, well, let's have an adult conversation. Can you give that money back to the county if it truly isn't going to implode your organization, because we can repurpose it? So being able to go down the line and line item veto, and not saying that we don't support that event, but maybe they have weaned themselves off of the grant money, I think would be really responsible. I'd like to see maximum. I'd like to hear from you, as we go through the years that you're getting maximum documentation. We've given money to different entities, education organizations, and others that in the end we stopped because the documentation wasn't there. You know, the great speech was there and the nice public comments, but then the documentation that was promised as part of the multi-million-dollar grant that they got never came. So hearing from you and even showing us as commissioners that the need is there, it's a necessity. They are working hard to wean themselves off of this grant money, and that they're providing proper documentation and justification. I think those go hand in hand. But as I look at what the ask is here, I think this might be the last time that it's, as Commissioner McDaniel said, approved as is. However, the shot across the bow is we're not just here to write blank checks and whoever asks for money, they automatically get it, that there's a much stronger filter system. But I would approve this grant money as is, with the pledge from you that all the things that we just mentioned would be aggressively looked at, and we'd be having, and we've said this in this room a few days before, we'd be having a totally different conversation 12 months from now, is my stance. Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple questions and a couple comments as well. I just want to kind of put this in perspective, and it sounds like there's not going to be an issue in terms of these grants this year, and I agree that every year these grants have to be evaluated. I'm assuming that the TDC does a fairly thorough evaluation of the grants and the benefits from those, but obviously the Board of County Commissioners makes the final decision. So I'm looking forward to that analysis next year again, because I think you went through that process this year, and then we can make a determination as to whether or not we agree with whatever the TDC comes up with. But I want to kind of put this in a little bit of perspective. Can you, off the top of your head, do you know what the total TDC funding is? The total amount of money that's generated by the 5 cent?
For the 5 cents,
Yeah.
this...
Just approximately.
Yeah, this last year we had tourist development tax collections of 47.4 million.
47.3 million, okay. And the not that it's relevant, because obviously we need to make sure that every penny is spent properly, but again, just kind of putting it in perspective, what is the total amount of these grants? I know it's in our paperwork here, but what's the total amount?
This particular year that is being presented is $750,000 for the category C2 and $100,000 for the marketing. So it's $850,000 total.
All right, so that is a big number, and a lot of benefits can be derived from that in terms of repairs and things of that, in terms of storm damage, but it's really a very small percentage of the total collection. Then in terms of the collection as well, how much of that goes into advertising?
Total advertising, in fact, it was on the slide right here, 33.75%, 33.5% goes to destination promotion marketing. This is basically our marketing budget. I will acknowledge not that full amount goes to marketing, because we have acknowledged that we're working within the budget the guidance. In fact, this year, 12 million of that actually is set aside as unallocated. So our expenditure, if I recall right, is around $9 million.
Okay, and that's to advertise private business.
That is to promote and market the destination globally.
But that's the benefit of the hotels, restaurants, and everything. So, and the entire community, the workforce and everybody. So obviously these are very important expenditures, and I trust that the TDC, the Tourist Development Council, really will be vetting this coming forward. I support the arts. I'm glad that Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner LaCastro have indicated their support this year, and I agree with them that we have to evaluate it every year. So there won't be a problem with it for this current year. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I supported, when we had brought this back, I think Commissioner Hall had raised the question in a previous meeting, to bring it back and kind of take a deeper dive into what we were doing. And, I was glad that we were going to have this conversation today. And, I wanted to hear from the people in the environment that, support these programs, run these programs, and how important the money is to them. And I came away with some more questions than I did answers, just sitting here today listening to some of these things. And I'm just going to go over them because I think these are the things we think we need to look at as we're moving forward, especially next year when this comes back around. In my mind, I'm questioning, some of these things that exist. I don't know if there was like a magic algorithm or something. I don't think it exists to figure out one from the other. If it's true tourism coming here for certain events or certain facilities, or is this just facilities to support our seasonal residents that are used to these type of facilities where they come from when they are up there in the summer, where they live in their New York cities and their Bostons and their Chicagos, and they have performing arts studios and plays they can go to and things like that? Or did these actually grow organically from them being our seasonal residents that came here? And while they're here in the winter, when they can't survive in the sub-zero temperatures or the heavy snow drifts, and they can still enjoy those things they enjoy in the cultural areas they live in or grew their wealth in. And, I don't know how we figure out one from the other, or these rainy day events, like when people were really drawled here because of the weather and the beaches, and the weather's not good, and they go to the Children's Museum because, listen, I got a car full of kids, I'm in a hotel, that's somewhere we can go, or are they actually coming here because of that? And I think that's the hardest thing we're going to have to look at moving forward. So I understand. I wanted to be more clear today, but I actually have more questions. And I think with my other colleagues, I'm going to support us today moving forward. But I really think we need to take a hard dive and really figure out some way to figure that algorithm out. Is this truly drawing people here, or are we just supporting lifestyles that people are used to? And that's the only reason it's here, because we have a lot of people that live in those jurisdictions up north that are accustomed to these type of things, and it just kind of organically grew from that. Not necessarily they're a draw from people that never experienced it from other parts of the world. So I think that's something we really need to dive into. But like I said, today I'm going to support us moving forward, but I really think it's an eye-opener for me, really. So thank you.
Yeah, and something I'll add to that, and then Commissioner Hall's lit up, and then I see Commissioner Saunders over here doing math, and he probably wants to give us some of those fractions. Come on, I want to take advantage of that.
I do have the fractions.
He's doing algorithms over here. Everybody we heard from today, I truly believe is obviously sincere. This is a passion, it's not a job. And whether they're public or private or what have you, I think they all share the same, common thread. But Paul, I would just tell you as you go forward, and I think because, I think we all really admire the experience and leadership that you've brought to the position, really getting in front of all these folks that get this investment money and making sure they're aware that if they truly don't need it or they can self-wean themselves off of it, it allows us to take that money and maybe help somebody else get started up. I mean, I'm thinking of the gallery out there or the event or what have you that has never gotten any money, and maybe because they didn't qualify, but now they're getting their act together. So it's also about responsibly moving the money around. We did that in here for 1,000 hours, just last week. It's not as easy as just writing blank checks to the people that always get it. And I think the group of art professionals that we heard from, I do think you all understand that. So remember, without sounding corny, your fellow brothers and sisters that maybe want to come to Collier County and do something with the arts and get things going. And, Paul, you only have so much money to go around. So being able to spread that wealth a little bit, sometimes you got to have somebody raise their hand and be responsible and say, we could always use it, but we don't need it. And knowing that the money isn't going to then get shredded, it's going to go to somebody else who shares that same passion as they do, and we could more robustly use the money. Or as Commissioner Hall said, we always have needs on public things, and making sure we can slide, that investment around, I think is going to be key. So I know we're going to have a much different discussion, next time you're at the podium talking about, this budget for, 12 months from now. Commissioner Hall.
So just to sum it up, I'm not questioning who the grants go to, not in the least. I'm questioning the grants themselves going to private or nonprofits. And so, the term invest, if I invest my money, I expect a return on my money. So if the public invest in public's money, they expect a return on it. And, if I was fighting for the position, I would definitely say this money is an investment into our industry. I would say the same thing, but they get the return. The taxpayers don't. So I think it's been said well that you're going to have support for this year. But going forward, I would really challenge each one of you in this industry to look at your balance sheets, look at your income expense statements, and figure out a way that you can do this without public money next year. And with that, I'll make a move to approve the.
Second.
I was going to ask actually Commissioner McDaniel to make the motion because he sits on the TDC and maybe just, for semantics.
Doesn't matter.
I'll withdraw the motions.
Commissioner McDaniel, make the,
Let it rip.
you do a lot of work for us on the inside here. And so,
Make a motion for approval.
okay, got a motion from Commissioner McDaniel to approve. I got a motion from Commissioner Hall. Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Again, we will now take a break and come back at 11:15.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay, let's see. Are we moving to 11C?
Yes, sir. We are moving to 11C, formerly item 16D2. This is a recommendation to accept an award from the Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant Funding Program through the Florida Department of Commerce in the amount of $981,067 for the construction and expansion of the Collier Senior Center Golden Gate facility. Authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreement and authorize the necessary budget amendments. This item is brought to the agenda, to the regular agenda by Commissioner Saunders' request, and Ms. Tanya Williams is here to present or answer questions.
Commissioner Saunders, did you want to make a statement, sir?
Yes, I would. And part of the reason for bringing this up is I wanted our two newest commissioners, I don't want to say new commissioners because you were new commissioners for the first 3 or 4 meetings. You're now well abused.
Newest.
Yeah, you're just abused commissioners now like the rest of us. This is one of the things that I really focused on when I first got elected was trying to improve the whole Golden Gate City, that 4 square mile area. And this is just another piece of that puzzle. It's a good news story. I remember going back to, I don't know when Steve Carnell left the county, but I was working with him for a year or two on this project. There's been a tremendous amount of philanthropy collected for this project. This is another grant fund. And it looks like this is a project now that is ready to really go underway. And I wanted the board to get a little bit of the history here, because again, it's a good news story for the whole Golden Gate City area. It's an area that quite frankly had been ignored by the commission for decades. And this commission has really taken up the mantle to improve that area, and this is just part of it. So if you could just let the board know what this project is, I'm sure there'll be no objections to it.
Thank you, Commissioner. For the record, Tanya Williams, Public Services Department Head. Commissioner Saunders is correct. We actually started talking about this project back in 2019. It actually came out of the budget hearings in 2019 and directed staff to move forward with a feasibility study. Prior to 2019, the Collier Senior Center was leasing, and they still are, leasing the old Golden Gate Library. When the new Golden Gate Library was opened, we still had the old building, and we worked with Collier Senior Services, and they have been leasing that building for their program since 2014. So we, the library, we, the county, have had a long-standing relationship with Collier Senior Center. So this project specifically is about hardening and expanding the existing footprint of the old library. Just for point of reference, you have the new library and then the old library, which is a little over 7,000 square feet that the Collier Senior Center is currently operating out of. And as Commissioner Saunders said, and as we have before you requesting your acceptance of the award, this is an additional grant opportunity. It's the CDBG CV grant in the amount of a little over $900,000. This is a project that is being paid for through multiple grants. And as Commissioner Saunders noted, we are getting ready to, and we will be bringing this back to you either the second meeting in October or the first meeting in November. We will be bringing back to you the contract award for design services. So we are at a point where we are ready to get started on this project. And in regards to the funding sources, which it did not put my update in here. Oh, I apologize for that.
There was something in there. Go back.
Nope, go back.
It was a spreadsheet.
Let me put it on the, let me switch over to this.
Visualizer.
There you go. Go one more previous slide. There it is.
This is a breakdown of the estimate for the cost of the building. The one that I wanted to talk about first, I apologize it didn't get to the update this morning. Troy, if you'll switch over to the... So how do we get to the funding that we have available for this, as I said, it's multiple pots of money. We were awarded a state appropriation last year, which we have been able to carry forward into this year for $250,000, which has started the conceptual designs. We were originally also awarded a CDBG mitigation hardening grant for $2,819,107. The CDBG CV grant that you are approving today for $981,057, and then a prior CDBG CV grant that is $1 million. And the library has $500,000 set aside in our 301 capital fund. That was part of the matching for the state appropriation, and it affords us a few extra dollars as well. So currently, as it stands, we do have a little over $5.5 million allocated for this project. Troy, we can go back to that prior slide now. And this is the most recent cost estimate breakdown for the project. And you will notice that as it stands, we are still looking at a delta of almost 1.3 million. But we really won't know the full scope of that delta or any possibilities of a delta until we actually get the design initiated.
Can I ask a quick question on that? I do know that there's been a fundraising effort by the board of directors and the members of that association, and I don't see that number in here at all.
That's not reflected in this. This is strictly just from the county perspective.
Okay, because I suspect that they've probably raised that at least that much, so that would be the first place to look. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted the board to know how this was funded and how important this project is, and I'd like to make a motion to approve the grant if there are no questions.
I second that motion. I would just ask you, it sounded like what I heard was that delta you believe is being made up.
Yeah, I just noticed that there's no indication here as to money that's been collected over the last several years. They have their annual meeting on November 7th. And the reason I know that's my birthday as well. So I wound up going to their meetings. This will be about the third year in a row that I've spent my birthday at their fundraising events. But they've been very successful in raising money. So let's check and see where they are with that. And let them know that this grant's being approved today and that we're ready to move forward.
I'd be happy to bring that information back when we bring the design contract.
Did you just sneak in your birthday into the record? You just snuck your birthday into the record?
Yeah, the day, not the year.
Okay. So we got a motion by Commissioner Saunders, second by Commissioner LaCastro. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passage unanimously, and we had no commissioners lit up for questions, so.
Thank you.
Put your social security number out there, too.
Commissioners, item 11D, formerly item 16A1, is a recommendation to direct staff to advertise and bring back for a public hearing an ordinance amending the Land Development Code to establish rules of decorum for neighborhood information meetings. This item is brought to the regular agenda by Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner LaCastro's separate requests. And Mr. Mike Bosey, your Director of Planning and Zoning, is here to answer questions and or make a presentation.
Let's hear your presentation, Mike, if you got one.
Good morning, Mike Bosey, Planning and Zoning Director. No, I haven't prepared an official presentation. This was a direction that the board provided to county staff after an unfortunate event at a neighborhood information meeting roughly about a year ago. Bringing back some rules related to decorum and expected decorum and how a neighborhood information meeting was provided. We've had a proposal on prior to the Planning Commission. Staff was suggesting potentially to allow for the first of the neighborhood information meetings to be held virtually only. The Planning Commission felt that there was value within in-person meetings. So we've pulled that back as directed or as recommended by the Planning Commission. So the first meeting that we're proposing has to be in person. We do allow an option for the virtual participation. And I know we've had some conversation, Commissioner, towards where you were looking to not make that optional, the Zoom or the video opportunities, but to actually mandate that be a provision within that first neighborhood information meeting to also require that they have a virtual participation option.
I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I just feel like it's 2023, and I think by them having the option and by an applicant having the option and not choosing to use it, it leaves a loophole to the citizens that maybe then don't get the vote they want to then say, well, we had 100 people that would have all Zoomed in, but they were all seasonal and they couldn't do it, or they had the option to utilize Zoom, but they chose not to use it to artificially have a smaller, less effective NIM. And so, that's just me. I think the option was making it a mandatory type of thing, that it's in person and Zoom, I think improves the process. And we had sort of talked about that a bit here, but that's why I probably pulled this for the same reason that Commissioner McDaniel did, is because I personally wanted to have a discussion about it and see how we were going to go forward, because I just think that this that the verbiage here does require blowing a little dust off. Things have changed a bit. We had some NIMs that didn't go great, but they weren't illegal, immoral, or unethical. By the direction in writing here, they counted, but I don't think any of us were proud of them. I remember that being a statement that we said a couple times when we had an issue. But having said that, Commissioner McDaniel, I'll defer to you. Do you have some comment?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it isn't a requisite.
Yeah.
I would be in favor of that if in fact it can be done. It's not. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't a 2 meeting requisite, 2 NIM meeting requisite, one of which being virtual, and those can be controlled. You don't allow people to get nasty or do anything offensive on those. They have an opportunity to write their comments in. It gives record of those folks that have a position one way or the other, and an opportunity then for the applicant to address those thought processes. So, you're going like this, so.
Commissioner, I was just waiting for you to finish statement, and I was going to address the thought process behind that, of not requiring 2 neighborhood information meetings, 1 in person, 1 virtual. The majority of neighborhood information meetings go off without a hitch. And so what I think Commissioner LeCastro was suggesting is have the in-person requirement and also have the virtual requirement. We do have a provision that if a NIM is to be postponed because of unruly behavior from the attending public, that a second meeting can or will be required, and that second meeting can either be in person with Zoom option or Zoom option only, a virtual meeting. So the results of the first meeting couldn't be repeated in the second meeting.
And your summary of my proposal was correct, that there'd be one NIM and it would have both, and then maybe there'd be a subset verbiage in here saying if that NIM with both in person and Zoom for some reason didn't fulfill the requirement, it was a disaster or whatnot, then we could direct, I guess, or whatever. I mean, what we're saying in here, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're tasking the staff here to take our inputs that we have now and then come back here with the right kind of verbiage. Me personally, I think 1 NIM, like you said, most go off without a hitch. It would be an improvement if it was in person and Zoom together. But then I'd love to see the verbiage, which would maybe be a little subset of that, and say, if in the unlikely event, even with in-person and Zoom, the NIM had the possibility of not counting or not being successful, that there was sort of a secondary option in the unlikely event. That was just my thought talking out loud.
And if you look at on the screen, the last sentence says, if the petitioner determines the NIM cannot be completed due to disorderly conduct of the members of the public, the petitioner shall have the right to join the NIM and be required to conduct another duly advertised NIM, either in person or via communications media technology, or both at the
Should it just be the petitioner, though? What happens if there was a NIM saying Commissioner Colwell's district, my district, anybody, and the petitioner thought it was fine? It was a little bit of an unruly crowd, but they want to get credit for it. But we feel like we've talked to our constituents, we got some feedback from the county staff, and we feel different. You know, the word petitioner's in here a lot, but it seems like that ties our hands a little bit, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe we always have the authority to say, I don't care what the petitioner said. We got enough feedback that the NIM shouldn't count. But, you know, I'm sure the county attorney, I mean, I defer to the county attorney. I want to have something in writing that isn't that isn't vague at all. Commissioner McDaniel, sir, you're lit up, and then Commissioner Hall.
I am. I think we cover all of what we're looking to ultimately do just by requiring virtual capacities, virtual attendance to be there. It's that simple. And then that flows into the second NIM in the event that the first one is determined to be unsuccessful, and we just do that. Again, this is 2023, and certainly the technology is availed to be able to do that. You provide for additional recordation within the Zoom. That's a portion of the Zoom process. Zoom, Teams, I don't care, Blue Jeans, whatever media, external sources there, virtual sources is availed. I'm not saying that it needs to be Zoom per se. It can be any kind of virtual attendance should be a requirement of our neighborhood information meeting process.
The requirement here is to take all of our input right now, not decide anything, but for you to take it as a homework assignment and then come back with something in writing that you think encapsulates everything that we've talked about, right?
Yeah, I mean, the direction that I'm hearing that's suggested from Commissioner McDaniel and yourself is to require to have a virtual media component to your first NIM, and then if it's disrupted because of disorderly conduct, then allow for that petitioner to have that second NIM, and they can choose to have it in person, or they could have it virtual only because of the circumstances of the first.
Okay. I'll have something.
If it is in person, excuse me, if it is in person, if the second meeting is in person, that there is a virtual component every single time there's a NIM.
I just will add clarification, and maybe Commissioner Hall and Commissioner Cole are going to piggyback on this as well, or they have even a better comment that would add to it. But I'll say again, I don't, unless I'm misinterpreting the wordage here, I don't like that this implies that the petitioner can decide if the NIM was successful or not. I think the petitioner can say, it was a 15-minute NIM, everybody was screaming and yelling, boom, mission accomplished, check. And we've had a few of those before. I'd like to see more latitude in here. And if it's in here, then maybe it just needs to be highlighted with a little bit more clear words. But I think we have the latitude to be able to say, I don't care what the petitioner said. I got enough feedback from county staff and from citizens that and a couple of times I think we've done that. So that would be just another piece of input, but let me hear from my colleagues here. Commissioner Hall, sir.
I just have a question. If the meeting, is there any accountability to the public if you disrupt the meeting, that you could be fiscally responsible for the next one? Or is it just, in 2023, where we've seen buildings burnt down and all kinds of protests and no really accountability, I would hate to see us set a precedent that if you just as a public don't agree with something, you can go disrupt the meeting and go do it again with no accountability. I don't know. I would not like that to see a strategy adopted by the public.
What I could tell you is it places the meeting that was disrupted and canceled. There was law enforcement. There was numbers of law enforcement at the meeting. They did not interject or interact with the unruly persons of the meeting simply because of First Amendment for speech rights. They didn't want to take away their rights for free speech. So because of that, I'm not sure how much, and I would have to turn to the county attorney's office, how much from a liability standpoint or a fiscal penalty would be associated with it. And I have to tell you that was one meeting, and since then we have had anything close in that regards, but it was an outlier without a doubt.
I understand. That's the exception and not the rule. I just wanted to bring it up.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on the lines with Commissioner LaCastro and Commissioner McDaniel, and even in the very first NIM meeting, having a component of the Zoom being part of it. But the only thing I ask is, or a question I have about that is, how do we determine that it's not going to get abused by, let's say, a special interest group or something, and aren't true neighbors? Because the neighborhood information meeting is truly for the neighbors that are going to be directly affected by something that may happen in the future. So how do we control, or how do we know that, somebody don't get on the Zoom and overwhelm it with people that really don't live in that neighborhood, and, they take over the meeting? I like the fact that people are not there all year round, and they have the option to use the Zoom because they are a true neighbor and fall within the parameter of what the meeting's meant for. But how do we, is there a way to register or determine that? Is that something we can look into also, just to make sure that it's not abused,
We could, we can go back and look at it, but I know registration has a chilling effect at times. Some people don't want to leave their name and number or their home address.
And how do we do it in here? How does Mr. Miller do it? Like if you said, oh, I have somebody on Zoom and they're from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and they have nothing to do with Collier County, but they just want to rant and rave for 3 minutes. I think they give you their name, they give you their specifics, correct?
We ask for addresses and so forth on the speaker slips. Not a lot of them fill out their addresses. Some do, but not all do. When you register for Zoom, it's a complete name, address, email, phone number, and all of that's required.
It's just a thought. If somebody's sitting here in the audience, like you said, and we could always mandate that and say you filled out an incomplete slip. But I think Commissioner Cole's got a great point. If somebody wanted to overwhelm the Zoom, we're trying to take out the loopholes in this, and also at the same time tighten it. Commissioner McDaniel. I'm sorry, Commissioner Cole, will you finish up?
That's
okay.
Yeah, I just want
Commissioner McDaniel.
That's a good point, but on the same token, somebody that's in Sheboygan, where? Wisconsin. Michigan. Isn't Sheboygan in Michigan? That's what I thought. But they have a right to speak as well, and I think it's up to us to go through the folks that are providing information and, as you like to say, separate the facts from rumors from facts. So I think if we just add the component requirement that a virtual aspect is added to the NIM, we cover the bases, whether it's 1 NIM, 2 NIMs, or 5.
Anybody else left? Do you feel like you have any questions, Mr. Boyd?
I do have a question or a comment to make. Because we have all the NIMs that we've conducted in the time that I've been here. I haven't been made aware of one where we felt that a NIM was dominated by a special interest group. So the one thing I would say is it has not become a problem. It hasn't been a problem in the past. Not saying that it can't be a problem in the past. One of the improvements that to address Commissioner LaCastro's point could be that in the sentence says if the petitioner determines a NIM can't be completed due to disorderly conduct of the members of the public, we could put the petitioner/staff to make it a collaboration. And if that's the case, staff could raise a point if we felt there was a special interest group that was dominating a NIM. We could raise that point to the applicant as an objection and then circulate amongst the administration to say what's the decision we should do, we should make within that type of a unique circumstance as well.
I think that change would give us the latitude to be able to address that and by having it in writing, we have the backup to be able to do it and not have the applicant think we're picking on them. But hey, by right, if the staff, and also too, if it was something that came to the commissioners or I had a question that constituents were raising that they thought the NIM was not valuable, the first thing I would do is go to staff, and then if we compared notes and staff agreed, wow, that sounds really bad, then like you said, I think just the word staff in there is more all-encompassing, and it gives us the latitude to be able to say, you know, across the board as staff, we don't think that the NIM should have counted. Like you said, these are going to be few and far between, but I think it's important, I'm sure we all do, that the verbiage be correct, so in those few and far between ones, we're covered. Commissioner McDaniel, sir. You're lit up.
Yeah, the thought I just wanted to put out there, again, you know, we can't catch everything, and the ultimate goal here is to give the opportunity for the public to speak. And just because it's called a neighborhood information meeting doesn't mean that I'm not negatively impacted because I live, where, Sheboygan? Because I live somewhere else and drive by a particular use request and it has a negative impact on my 3-foot circle. So, I mean, just because we call them neighborhood information meetings doesn't mean that a particular zoning change or a use request change isn't going to impact a larger group. You know, if you'll recall, when I first became the commissioner, the Golden Gate Estates only had a 500-foot notice process for a use change. And in Golden Gate Estates, sometimes that's one neighbor. And so we expanded that to, I think, to a half a mile, and that certainly wasn't enough. And then we actually went to a mile ring. So a use change has an impact. A use change request has an impact on a much larger group, and by notifying more people, we actually enjoin more of the public to become participatory. So I think with that virtual component being added in, we've got the capacity to keep the outliers at a low roar, and you can always, you know, Troy shuts them off all the time. All you got to do is hit the pause button on them, and they're no longer allowed to play.
Do you think you have enough direction from us to come back with something in writing that would fulfill all those requirements of what we discussed here?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. I don't see anybody else lit up, so I don't think it's a vote or anything. It's just open discussion. So thank you. County Manager?
Commissioners, that brings us to item 11E, which is formerly 16A7. This is a recommendation to approve an agreement for sale and purchase with 1 Gary D. Higdon, 2 Matthew Van Cleve, 3 Pedro Juan Perez Castro, 4 Richard D. Brewer, and 5 John Edwin English as trustee of the John Edwin English Trust under the Conservation Collier Land Acquisition Program at a cost not to exceed $977,220. This item is brought to the regular agenda by Commissioner McDaniel's request, and Ms. Jamie Cook, your Director of Development Review, is here to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. There are 5 properties before you today for your consideration for the purchase agreements. One of the properties, the Higdon property, was part of the Cycle 10 active acquisition list, which was approved by the board in January of 2022. 2 properties were part of the Cycle 11A active acquisition list, which was approved in December of 2022. And the final 2 were part of the 11B list, which was approved by you on February 28th of 2023. The first property, which was part of the Cycle 10 list, is part of the Winchester Head Preserve. We discussed this one Winchester Head briefly at the last board meeting, but Winchester Head is primarily for floodplain storage and has been deemed by the Big Cypress Basin to be critical for floodplain storage and modeling efforts for the canals out in the Golden Gate Estates area. Approximately 65% of the Winchester Head area has been acquired by Conservation Collier. And in addition to the floodplain storage, it also does provide habitat for listed species, including wading birds and the Florida panther. The Higdon property itself, you can see, is in bright yellow. It is 1.59 acres and consists primarily of freshwater wetlands and is 100% depressional soils, which means it is capable of retaining that water for floodplain compensation and storage. The purchase price is approximately 90% of the appraised value of the property. The second preserve is part of the second parcel. Is part of the Rivers Road Preserve. We haven't discussed this one recently before all of you, but the Rivers Road Preserve is located off of Rivers Road, off of Immokalee Road, east of Collier Boulevard. It is approximately 97 acres in size and does provide habitat for panther, black bear, and a variety of other listed wading bird species. It contributes to a wildlife corridor, both to the north to the Crew lands, as well as private preservation lands both to the east and south, as you can see in the hatched white areas of the map on the left on your screen. The property in question for this acquisition is 0.5 acres and does contain mostly exotic vegetation at this time. However, it is anticipated that it could be restored to a native cabbage palm hammock habitat. The purchase price of $52,500 was the 100% of the appraised value of the property. The third property for your consideration is part of the Gore Preserve. We also discussed this one at the last meeting, and the Gore Preserve contributes to wildlife corridors that connect other private and public conservation lands, including the Conservation Collier North Belmead Preserve, the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District Sending Lands, which does consist of privately owned preserves, the RLSA lands, the federally owned Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, and Picayune Strand State Forest to the south. The Perez Castro property is part of the Gore Preserve area. It is 1.17 acres and consists of forested shrub wetlands. The purchase price of $27,600 is 95% of the appraised value. And then the last two properties for your consideration today are not part of any other existing preserves. However, they are adjacent to existing preserves. The first being the Brewer property, which is 4 parcels, and it's a little under 15 acres of forested shrub wetlands. This provides habitat for listed species, including wading birds and the Florida panther. But it is also unique in that it is annually used by swallowtail kite as part of their pre-migratory roost habitat for them before they migrate south each year. This is adjacent to existing Crew lands directly to their west, which you can see highlighted in green. And the purchase price of $405,900 is 90% of the appraised value, but the Crew Land and Water Trust has committed to donating $7,500 towards the purchase price of this property. And then the English Trust property is 59 acres. It's highlighted in red on this map, and it is adjacent to the Pepper Ranch Preserve out in Immokalee. It consists of mixed shrub habitats as well as wetland hardwoods. It provides habitat for listed birds, Florida panther, black bear, and it also can help provide water quality enhancements for Lake Trafford by filtering out sediment or other pollutants before the water reaches the lake. Again, with this purchase price, the Crew Land and Water Trust has committed to paying $5,000 of that $463,500 towards the purchase price.
What was that purchase price in relation to the appraisal?
It was 90% of the appraised value of the property. So on this screen, you can see the total acreage, appraised value, and purchase prices. as well as the maintenance costs. So with these 5 parcels, that would add 77.05 acres to the Conservation Collier lands. The appraised values was well over $1 million, but the purchase prices would be $977,220, taking into account the donations from Crew. With that, staff is recommending that you approve the purchase agreements and acquire the properties as part of the Conservation Collier Land Acquisition Program at a cost not to exceed $977,220. And with that, I will take any questions.
Yeah, I'm going to make some opening comments. I don't see anybody lit up here. First, I would say our initiative of strongly suggesting that the appraisal price not just be the default amount is working. I mean, every little bit helps. So you see the difference in the appraisal over the course of the year. That could buy us a couple more properties. The other thing I would just say, especially on the heels of our last budget, there is a misconception out there by some who sent us hundreds of emails before, during, and after the budget discussion that they believe the Conservation Collier program, some, not all, some, keeps giant apartment buildings from being built. That Conservation Collier is going down US 41 and Collier Boulevard, and when they see a big wooded area that's actually owned by David Torres and it's already zoned for residential and it's going to be a bunch of houses, that some actually believe that if we made Conservation Collier smaller, but this is a great visual of the usual type of properties. Not all. You know, we were in here just, a couple months ago, and there was a piece of property on Marco. We didn't buy it, but, you know, there wasn't going to be a 500-unit apartment complex on that piece of property. It was just possibly just going to be a house if somebody buys it. But the lands that are bought by Conservation Collier more often than not are exactly what we see here. Lands that have native plants, that are cross streets for panthers, or you know, there's a bird population there or whatnot. And so I know in my replies to a lot of citizens that, and I actually, I'm just looking here, I actually got an apology back from one lady who was very, very, very specific, and then said, you know, I appreciate understanding the program better. And maybe we still agree to disagree, but I think this visual is a perfect example that, you know, when some citizens just say, you know, fund Conservation Collier to the max because we're turning into Miami, that's, you know, that begs a little bit of debate. And so I appreciate the visuals. I'm glad to see that we're not paying full price for these. Obviously, Commissioner McDaniel pulled this off of the consent agenda. I would expect to talk about it, and he's lit up. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, yes, I am the one that pulled it, and I have a suggestion that for the foreseeable future, that all of the Conservation Collier acquisitions be top line, don't be jammed into consent agenda. I think it's worthy of public discussion for us to have all of these purchases top line, when I say above item 16 on the consent. The rationale for pulling it was, one, to have that discussion. Number two, to have a visual, because we're all have asked many times about where these parcels are and how they fit into the puzzle of the target protection zones that are established, of the critical lands that are to be set aside via Conservation Collier. So the description that was in the item when I reviewed it was individually for each one of the pieces, and granted they were all in different areas, but I wanted to have that presentation so that the public had an opportunity to review that information as well. And the third, my third comment is, and I didn't even realize it until we got this presentation, I serve on the Crew Land Trust Executive Committee and Board of Trustees that are making contributions over here to these acquisitions. Am I conflicted out?
You have a personal interest in this transaction?
No, sir.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I just, so with that, I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a public comment.
We have one registered speaker, Brad Cornell.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to address you on this. I'm Brad Cornell, here on behalf of Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida, and its Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. I want to make 2 points. One is that these 5 properties, as you all have discussed, are really ecologically, highly ranked, ecologically important properties. So I appreciate the motion. Audubon supports that motion to purchase these. They're all adjacent to existing preserves, and that's one of the criteria that are used to evaluate what's the value. We don't want to, if we can avoid it, having isolated parcels. We want them part of large preserves and the ecology of that. So these do, and I want to flag particularly that Brewer parcel with the swallowtail kite roost, the migratory roost, which is just super important in terms of the biology of this is a threatened species, and we need to do, we can play a role and will play a role in purchasing that and ensuring its protection forever. And Dick Brewer did a wonderful job of personally buying these for that purpose. So I applaud Dick, and he's now passing the baton to Conservation Collier, so thank you for grabbing that. Second thing I want to point out is that applications like these come to Conservation Collier mostly as a result of target protection area mailing strategies that are annually discussed and recommended to you all, and then you adopt them, you approve them each year for the next cycle. So you heard Jamie Cook reference cycle 10 and 11. The current year's cycle is cycle 12, and that target protection area mailing has not occurred yet. It's been ready since February, and it's overdue. You all have not had a chance to have that on your agenda. So Audubon strongly recommends that you get that on your agenda as soon as possible and approve that so that so the Conservation Collier can send out mailings to. What it does is it sends solicitations, a letter specific to property owners in the areas that we want to buy land, like these 5 parcels. And without that mailing, you don't get as many applications. People just don't know that the application process is open for cycle 12. So if I can urge you strongly to get that on your agenda and approve that as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
I know Commissioner McDaniel made a motion to approve, and one of the things that I assume is part of your motion, and I definitely agree, and maybe my colleagues will chime in here as well, is that purchase of Conservation Collier lands not be on the consent agenda, so we can always talk about it, always have a visual, always give some guidance, realize what we're doing, and it's not invisible to the public. I would second that motion, but I got Commissioner Saunders just lit up, sir.
Just a couple.
Oh, you were too?
Go
Okay.
ahead, you can do him
Go ahead,
first,
sir.
and then I'll go.
Just a couple questions. What properties or how much property is kind of in the pipeline, if you will, in terms of where the committee's looking at? And I know there's some fairly large parcels that have at least been under consideration. So do you have any idea of the magnitude of what's being looked at?
We have, I believe, 4 or 5 properties scheduled for the 1010 BCC meeting. The 3 owners on Marco are tentatively scheduled for the October 24th BCC meeting. And then at that point, that's pretty much everything that's been in the pipeline unless we move forward with cycle 12. We have received some applications for cycle 12 already, but would like to bring those forward.
In terms of cycle 12, do you have any idea of, again, the magnitude of what we're talking about at this point, potentially in cycle?
I believe right now we're looking probably at about 10 parcels that have applied, but that would not include the target protection mailing area.
All right. And I know we have an ordinance coming up that will deal with movement of some of those funds from Conservation Collier to other uses, and I think the county attorney is working on that, but we need to find some ways to streamline the whole Conservation Collier acquisition process. And I'd like to see if there's support from the board to kind of direct staff to start looking at how can we make this process better, because it is very cumbersome. I think it was just noted that there's some advertising, some mailings that were scheduled to go out in February. Maybe they still will go out in February, but it'll just be a different year. And that's you know, those types of delays, we have to find a way to make this process better. And I know, Mr. French, I don't know if you have any comments as well in terms of how to do this, but either one of you, do you have some ideas?
I would say that, as you all know, this program came over to Growth Management Community Development in May. So I believe that we would welcome those opportunities for those discussions, both with the board as well as the manager's office, on how to improve the program or speed up the process, if that is your wishes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, after this motion is voted on, I'd like to make a motion to direct our staff to work with the acquisition committee, with the county attorney, and let's fix this program, because one of the things we've run into is that there was a tremendous amount of money in this program that wasn't being spent. And you see what happens if you don't spend your allocation, sometimes it disappears. So I want to make sure that we have an effective program, one that is much more rapid in terms of getting projects evaluated and to us for acquisition.
Thank you, Commissioner Saunders. For the record, Jamie French, your Department Head for Growth Management. Commissioners, we totally agree with you. We believe that there are enhancements to the program, and with the board's support, we'd like to initiate those. I've only had brief conversation with Mr. Cornell, but reaching out to our environmental partners and those non-government agencies that exist that support these conservation efforts, we believe that more visibility needs to be brought to the program. We think that there are enhancements that may, much like everything else that needs to be improved over time, we believe it's time. And as Ms. Cook said, we've had this for 4 months. We look forward to the opportunity. I need to be careful for what I asked for, because I asked for this, and Jamie was voluntold that she's going to be helping us. So we appreciate the opportunity, but we think it's the right thing for the community. And we do think that it'll be a better tool for you as a board to work with with your community constituents, so that you know what's in the pipeline, you know where we are. I know there was some discussion with regards to, we collect so much money, but we only spend so much, and it may be staff's fault. Quite honestly, that we should have done a better job at providing you with the visibility on what is in the pipeline. And perhaps as we bring these properties forward, I don't think it harms or it hurts the transaction in saying, well, how much do you want for it? And bring that to the board, or perhaps even doing that assessment early on, so we know for pre-planning in the future how those monies are going to interact, and as well as the maintenance piece, how much maintenance is actually, because much like construction or development, restoration it's expensive as well. And so we recognize, depends on the way that land lies, the topography, the way it holds water, the natural sloughs, the habitat. We understand that some of those maintenance obligations may be greater on some properties than others. But again, we believe that the board needs full visibility on that. Not that it hasn't received visibility. We just think, as always at Growth Management and under our county manager leadership, we're going to make it better and make it improve for you.
I thought I recall at the budget meeting when we asked, what was in the pipeline, and not future, like what could be coming to us, but things that we've already touched. If we bought all of it right now, what would it go for? And I remember hearing the number approximately $8 million, which I think was a number that was much smaller than I would have expected. Yes, there might be something in the pipeline that possibly could come to us that's 30 million or something like that, but I remember at the budget meeting that number being thrown around, and not that we have to confirm it now, but everything you just said, Mr. French, I think is what we're looking for, more visibility. What are we touching right now that we're about to finalize, and what's it look like? What's sort of that next layer, so that we have much more of a sense of urgency of either making command decisions on purchase or not. Every property might not get purchased. It doesn't meet the criteria. It's not a priority A-list, type property. But for us to have consideration to just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, or approved all of them, that's what we're looking for at a much more rapid pace.
Yes, sir. And look, commissioners, we failed to talk about even what you did in August, where you authorized us to go into a negotiation on a property in Immokalee, the Williams Farm property, which we are in negotiations, and that is a giant acquisition with a great environmental benefit that we have not had the opportunity to take that to your conservation board yet, or to your advisory committee yet. But there are a lot of moving parts to this. Clearly, we're new to it. Not an excuse, but that one's less than a month old, and we're still in negotiation. But again, these types of considerations, we need to do a better job at bringing that forward to both our budget office partners as well as this board.
Okay, a lot of people lit up here. Commissioner McDaniel, followed by Commissioner Hall.
Yes, two things. I'd like to ask the question, because I wasn't aware that we were sitting on a mailing for Cycle 12. For a piece of property to get to a cycle approval, it's been vetted, it's been looked at, it's been approved by our staff, environmental consultants, so on and so forth.
Correct. And the Cycle 12 properties that we are anticipating to bring forward have recently gone to the CLAC, so they are being scheduled for your consideration in October.
But the mailing for solicitations that Mr. Cornell spoke of that have been sat upon since February, why are we not mailing?
From what I understand, and I don't know if Amy or Dan could speak to this, that had been put on hold prior to the transition over to growth management.
Yes, sir. So we've had a lot of conversations since January about this program, the future of this program, how much we had backlogged into the pipeline, and the appropriate times to be soliciting for new properties. So we've been working our way through that in preparation for what's gone on through the summer with the board workshops and the final resolution of the budget, so that the board can make a decision on whether they want to send additional mailings out. With the number of conversations that we had and the quantity of perceived backlog, there were multiple conversations about not making that worse or setting expectations that we would be able to acquire property that there potentially could be less available funding for. I think now we know the picture, and we can bring that forward and get the board's perspective, and also discuss the frequency at which we want to be dealing with these cycles as well as these mailings.
Okay. And in that light, I don't want this to be revenue driven. I want this to be environmentally driven, environmentally centric driven with regard to the environmental sensitivity of the properties. And if it's fully explained with the solicitation that goes out for acquisition in these target protection areas, these are areas that the board, have deemed to be environmentally sensitive and important. It would, to me, make sense for not administratively to sit on a solicitation, as long as it's fully explained that it has to go through the process, has to be appraised, it ultimately has to be approved by this board, and this board isn't going to approve an acquisition unless the revenues are there, in fact, to go forward with it. Creating a backlog isn't, or a need isn't really a bad thing, other than, and that may allow us in the future to better direct available funding.
Sir, if I may, I think the picture of this has become clearer as we've had these conversations. But remember, when we started these conversations, we had people coming to us saying, you promised to buy this. So that's a messaging thing on our side that I think, as we have had layering conversations, we're way more prepared to do exactly as you're explaining, but also by not setting an expectation that a mailing equals an automatic buy.
Yeah, well, and that's a improper expectation that was put out some time ago that needs to be corrected. And I think with the revisions that Commissioner Saunders has suggested, that we can be better in our messaging to let the folks know you happen to own land in a designated target protection zone, and should you meet these criteria, ultimately with the board's approval, the opportunity for the disposition of that asset is afforded to you, but not here we are in September after a February mailing has been generated and someone internally has chose to sit on that. My second point, and it travels right along with that, there's a serious misnomer amongst the community that there are certain lands that cannot be developed. And that really isn't correct. property rights reign. When you own a piece of property that's got property rights on it, you have those rights. They're bequeathed to you. Now, the costs associated with the mitigation necessary to build a home in the middle of a cypress dome may be cost prohibitive, but those rights reign. You have those rights, and that's an important fact for people to know and understand. There's a misnomer that we're buying land that can't be developed anyway. That's not correct. You can already see in that Winchester head map that was up there earlier, there's homes. There's homes in that area. I'm encapsulating that right here, but so that's the second point that I wanted to make is the misnomer of undevelopable anyway is just in fact that, a misnomer. It just is a matter of cost with regard to the mitigation and getting through the permitting through the other agencies.
Commissioner Hall, and then Commissioner Saunders and Commissioner Cole after that.
No, I love the discussion, and I'd love to see the program get off a dead center. And I've probably been the one guilty up here of saying undevelopable land, not meaning legally, I'm meaning likely wise. So I want to clarify that. I'll own that, I said it, but that's what I was meaning. As far as, has anybody seconded Commissioner Saunders' motion? Okay. So on that second motion, in streamlining this process, maybe the applicants can come up with their own appraisals. Maybe we can exclude comps that Conservation Collier has already provided in those other sales, so that we're not creating our own market, so that the actual market is reflective of those appraisals. Maybe some maintenance concessions depending on the price that we negotiate with those people. Maybe they can take the maintenance initial cost and the maintenance for the next 5 years. We're taking these properties off of the tax rolls, so those could be some concessions to, if they're willing to do that, to get moved up. Paying the closing cost is a small ask, but it takes that off of the taxpayers, maybe to get, to get these things moved forward. These are just some ideas, throwing it forward just to consider.
I mean, we do have a motion on the floor from Commissioner McDaniel, and I had seconded it, but then we got a bunch of commissioners that have lit up. So Commissioner Saunders, sir, the floor is yours.
Yeah,
and then Commissioner Cole.
Yeah, we're sort of mixing in the going forward issue dealing with fixing the ordinance. Are we permitted, and have we been purchasing environmental easements as opposed to fee simple?
I believe they've all been done in fee simple.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question, I knew what the answer was, but we should be purchasing, wherever possible, environmental easements. So, for example, some of the farm lands that might be lands that could be have some environmental benefit, there's no reason why we wouldn't purchase environmental easements so that we take the development rights away from the property. The property owner can continue to farm it. So I think we need to be more creative in terms of how we meet some of these environmental goals. Property owner may want to retain a piece of property just for hunting and recreation, but may be willing to sell whatever development rights they have. So we may be able to accomplish a lot of these environmental benefits by buying environmental easements, buying the development rights and having environmental easements on property at a much lower cost than fee simple. So that's part of what I would like to see as we develop this new or different approach.
Speaking to both your point and Commissioner Hall's point, we've had some of these similar discussions. For example, what do you want for your property as part of the initial application. So I think at our next meeting, as we come forward with some more of these and the TPMA mailings and the Cycle 12 active acquisition list, we can present some of those ideas to you.
Great. I mean, just to clarify too, the motion's just to buy these properties, but a lot of good improvements that are being fed to you all as you continue to bring these properties to us in the future. Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to Commissioner Saunders about the mailing and getting to that. I mean, I look at it just from my little bit of research I did leading in today and with staff's help. You know, I saw that particular property, a River Road property, and it's very distinct that there's a hole in that donut, and hate to bring it back up, donuts with the Dunkin' Donuts thing, but there's a definite hole in that donut. And, you know, maybe with the melling, we'd be more strategic and more laser focused on particular properties, like, because this River Road is already open to the public. It's being used. There's walking trails or stuff like that already on this particular preserve. And you have this big hole in the donut there. So I think, you know, let's be more efficient and more laser focused on, you know, putting our efforts towards, let's close some of these holes in these donuts. And, you know, because then we have something we can actually look at and say, and the people can look at and say, look, that's all preserved. This is great. You know, it's usable. We're using it, you know, things like that. Instead of just a shotgun effect and hoping people participate. But, you know, I think that might be in the future, start looking at, you know, more laser focused mailing to certain properties to, you know, really let them know the importance of closing these holes in these donuts. So, and Commissioner Saunders said something there that maybe I can get some more insight on this buying the rights to development.
That's a great thing.
And does that also, it doesn't alleviate the person. If he wants to buy whatever, 100 acres in some area that he wants to hunt on and leave it in some, you know, environmentally protected type condition, but he still owns it and he still pays taxes on it, but we basically locked that for the rest of its life cycle to remain some site. Is that what?
That's exactly correct, and that's what the state is doing in a significant amount, is purchasing those development rights and recording an environmental easement. Those easements are fully enforceable, and so that's just another tool to accomplish the same result, which is to keep land and preserve, but at a much less cost. Now, I don't know what kind of taxes you would generate after you get an environmental easement on a piece of property, because there's really not much value left in it.
We wouldn't own it.
We would not own it, no.
The person would still own it, and he still has some obligation.
Yes, and we could, in those types of easements, the county, you know, if it's required that the county, to acquire that easement, has to maintain some of the exotics and that sort of thing, that's all part of a negotiation with the property owner, but it's generally a lot less costly than fee simple, and that's just another tool that we should be using.
Yeah, I mean, how great it would be to have a very valuable property out there and buy the building rights at a much less cost, and even have the owner to agree to maintain it. So we don't even have the maintenance costs, how many more properties we could buy, or how much better we could utilize the Conservation Collier budget. And I bet you too, we could blow through these properties with a much more sense of urgency. Commissioner McDaniel, sir.
And it almost typifies what's going on in the rural land stewardship overlay. Voluntarily, property owners are setting aside the more environmentally sensitive lands and transferring those development rights with incentives to less environmentally sensitive lands. And we learned that agriculture and agricultural uses do coincide with the environment. The animals use those environment as well, farming, cattle, hunting, so on and so forth. So those are, and that answer of buying those easements in lieu of fee simple is a great tool for the toolbox.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner McDaniel to approve the 5 purchase agreements and acquire these properties as part of the Conservation Collier Land Acquisition Program at a cost not to exceed $977,220. I have a second by Commissioner LaCastro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passage unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make just a motion so that we're official in terms of directing staff to evaluate the existing program, come back with improvements to the ordinance, work with the committee, work with the commission, with some emphasis on, or at least an addition of the authority to negotiate easements instead of just simply fee simple acquisition.
I think a second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Saunders and a second by Commissioner McDaniel to aggressively pursue those improvements and bring us back a plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passage unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. County Manager, next.
Item 15 is staff and commission general communications. 15A, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda by individuals not already heard during previous public comments in this meeting.
We have no one, sir.
Item 15B, staff project updates. While we don't have any officially on the list, we can invite Jamie Cook up to give you an update on your favorite topic, rock crushing.
Yeah. Well, she got some good.
Really? Thought we
gave
were
her some
going to get
homework
out of here
assignments, and
without
she-
that today.
She pursued the homework assignments, so asked her to give us a update.
I try to deliver. Again, Jamie Cook, your Director of Development Review. I spoke with the property owner on last Friday. Both he and the contractor believe that the crushing activities will be done next Friday on October 6th. They will still need to leave, so they will remove the crusher from the site at that point. They will still need to leave at least one of the densifiers on site to help crush up the metal, the rebar, and some of the other construction debris so that they can put it into the dumpsters before they haul it off site. If they don't crush it before, that leaves a lot of open space in that dumpster that then becomes unusable. They have actually started spreading some of the material that's on site, and they did have a water management district permit through the state for their environmental resource permit. So they are still having to comply with some of the requirements of that permit, one of which being the berms around the preserve, which is interior to the property and behind the Ferrano development. The water management district has required them to raise the berms around that preserve, so they have been authorized by the district to use some of this fill material that they've crushed to raise those berms. So they will still be doing some minor site work, finishing up the lakes and doing those berms after next Friday, but the crushing is expected to be done by next Friday.
My only concern with the berms, and it would just be more of our observation, is if it's a lot of crushed material during heavy wind or whatnot, it becomes powder that blows around. I mean, and that happens with any berm. Berms we put on the beach. Problem is, where I think they're talking about the berms, you got the Boys and Girls Club sort of right over there. It's not just Ferrano. So I guess we'll monitor that closely. I know you guys are out there regularly. I go by there quite a bit, and I've seen the improvement. But if it was something where the berms were going to fulfill one requirement, but it was going to create another problem, which was dust and sediment to the houses and Boys and Girls Club, you know, we want to monitor that closely because they're not going to be able to wet it down 24 hours a day the way you do, and you don't want to see a lot of dust. These would be berms that would be basically permanent, but using crushed rock to do it. So what are your thoughts on that, Jamie?
Correct, and they will also have to be sodded as part of that
Okay.
permit.
Oh, there you go.
So
Okay.
there will be controls.
It's sod growing and crushed rocks probably. So, but it's going to be a combination, I'm sure. We'll just we'll monitor that closely. You know, you and I and others have been out there visually. If we see something that we don't like, or if I hear from, you know, citizens, I'm sure, you know, we'll speak. But unless the commissioners have any objection, I think we're headed in a positive direction. Let's make sure that I understand what you said in my office yesterday is the crusher would be gone, and that's a big piece of equipment. So seeing that gone. The other pieces of equipment are obvious because they're removing the rebar, but weaning them off of those pieces of equipment, making sure it's clear to them that October 6th we see a big muscle movement, but then, you know, setting some sort of timeline or dates, even that you just set with the contractor that makes sense. I don't think you need to run in here every time and say, you know, one more piece of equipment, is it the 10th, is it the 11th? You know what the expectation is, to slowly get all of that equipment gone. And I've already said to the citizens there, when the last piece of equipment is gone, you're still gonna see a truck, you're still gonna see exotics being removed. There's still work to be done on any piece of property. But the big moving parts, the big muscle movements by the 6th and soon thereafter should be slowly disappearing. And then once they start, and you said they already have, start to spread that crushed rock, that lot starts to look more aesthetically, you know, acceptable, I guess. So keep us posted, and, you know, I'm sure you and I will talk. I don't see any of the commissioners lit up. That was just basically an update. Thank you. County Manager, any other updates?
Yep, so we're to item 15C, Staff and Commission General Communications. Just a reminder, we do have our upcoming workshop next Tuesday. This is regarding insourcing, outsourcing, contracting, consulting, CEI. These are the topics that we've been pretty regularly talking about here, the things that we hire out for, the things we do in-house. Each group is a little bit different, so we'll be prepared to discuss that with you.
Mr. Chairman, on
Yes,
that,
sir. Go.
on that, the Productivity Committee would like to make a report on some of their activities that will mesh very well with that discussion. At the end of the meeting, let me give you one of the committee members' names and phone number. She's put together a little report, and I think your involvement with her would be very helpful.
Absolutely, no problem. One other item, I received some communication from the David Lawrence Center regarding their upcoming participation with ACA for the LIP program because of their status as a central receiving facility. So statutorily, they need us to fill out a questionnaire and sign a non-binding letter of agreement. This is relative to money going up to the state to be leveraged then for federal dollars back. Unfortunately, that has to be done by September 30th. So we have conferred with ACA. This is a non-binding letter, and they don't need your action on it now. I can fill the forms out and sign, and then we're planning on being back to you the first meeting in October. We can ratify that because we're going to need to have a conversation about the funding that goes along with this. I just wanted to advise the board of that process. Otherwise, if we haven't submitted those on behalf of the county to David Lawrence, they will not be eligible to participate.
Commissioner Saunders.
And my understanding from that program is that if there's a commitment of dollars from Collier County to David Lawrence Center, the question is that not to use the best of words, is that a gift to David Lawrence Center, or do we get those dollars back? Because typically we would get those dollars back.
They're used to leverage dollars coming back to David Lawrence. So the way this is being, and this is what we're going to be coming back to you in October to discuss. We don't want to close the door by not filling out these questionnaires and agreements, but also don't want to be bound by our understanding of the situation as it stands, as well as how this plays into both the funding for the current facility as well as moving forward with the larger.
Do you have any idea how much money is going to be involved in that transfer?
$568,000 for this one, but there's obviously that number grows as the facility gets larger and as we move towards the construction of the central receiving
Then
facility.
just one last question. What is the markup that comes back from Washington? What's the magic increase?
They had indicated to us, and we'll be verifying these numbers, that the money comes back will be about double that or maybe a little bit better.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez does have an update on beach parking as well.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dan Rodriguez, your Deputy County Manager. We've actually had some successful meetings with the city, as we mentioned to you during our one-on-ones, and they did go to their council members through a workshop, and they've agreed tentatively to extend the beach permit process for the next year and keep the rate at the $1.5 million. They did ask for the county support in taking some operational costs and capital improvements for beach access to the TDC, as well as spending this next year to really look at the expenses associated with the beach access and also participation rates for the city and the county, so that coming to you in the future with future extensions, probably a more sound method for allocating taxpayer funds. And there were some, if you get a chance, with some very positive comments from the council members there who spoke that the city residents are county residents. And kudos to Jay Boudichet, the city manager there, in that he was very collaborative. They had their key positions, but at the end, we all worked as a team, so it speaks volumes to the coordination. And I believe also that the work done by the county government, your county manager, as well as emergency services during that trying time of Hurricane Ian, helped to kind of bridge relationships there, letting them know that we're there to support the city when we need to, and they're there to support us and our residents on these very important issues. And additionally, unless there's any objections, the county manager is going to administratively approve the extension, and we'll bring that back to you on the 10th for official approval.
That's all we have, County Attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioners?
Okay, I'll start at the opposite end this time. Commissioner Hall, sir, final comments?
Yes, I'd like to, we talked about the other night about bringing a third party in and to take a deep dive into the county operations. I don't know procedurally what has to happen, if I need to make a motion and have that done. I've had some conversation with the Productivity Committee to see if they would be willing to help participate in locating some 3 or 4 different companies as options with, what their plans are, what their costs are, what their timeframes are, et cetera, et cetera. And since we could just have a chance here to talk together, I didn't know what needed to be done to move forward.
Can I make a comment in reference to the Productivity Committee? That's really not in their wheelhouse. I mean, they're volunteers that are really doing a great job in terms of looking at different aspects of the budget. Just as an example, right now they're looking at our outsourcing of engineering. They made a great number of recommendations on how to improve some of the park and recreation operations. But to ask them to start digging into finding consultants, I think really just our staff would be much better at that, because these folks are pretty busy to begin with.
Okay, I mean, I'm listening, but, the old adage, you never ask an insurance salesman if you need insurance. I've got some sources coming in with some work using a process that would be providing that information to the Productivity Committee. That was the conversation that I had. I've only had one. But, I understand that that's not in their wheelhouse. I didn't know if they could bring those companies to us as a recommendation, or if we could, I don't mind having staff look into that, but I'd prefer outside, keep it outside.
We are going to have a representative of the committee at our workshop on October 3rd, and I'll get a hold of her and see if she can talk to, just give that some thought without violating the Sunshine Law. She has got to be a little careful.
Mr. Magel is who I had the conversation.
Yes. And I'll talk to Mr. Magel as well and see what they think about that. And
Commissioners, if I may, the choice to bring in an outside consultant or not is purely up to you, and we use outside consultants for a lot of different things, which we'll be talking about on Tuesday, coincidentally. However, we do have to consider the procurement ramifications for whatever we choose. So within certain thresholds, we have more flexibility. When you get into more detailed or elaborate processes, we will have to utilize a different procurement method. So we just want to probably think through those. What we can do is we can collect our thoughts here before the next meeting and be prepared.
Recording stopped.
Be prepared to have a conversation about that because, of course, we don't want to enter into a type of procurement that's actually going to delay us to the point that it's not effective for this process. We're really looking to kick this off here pretty quickly. And as we move towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year, be prepared to have a very productive conversation with you before the setting of any kind of budget policy.
Good. I just want to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Commissioner McDaniel?
Yes, well, then on that note, why don't you work with our staff, with our county manager, and find out the most expeditious path for us to travel, and then give us an update next Tuesday when we're together in a workshop. We're not going to vote on anything then, but we can certainly have an update on the process because, again, if we go into an RFP process, it's not going to be good. So there are other ways for us to travel to get there, other contractual arrangements that are out there that may be able to be utilized to be able to move us forward with a selection of somebody to help us with that. And I just want to say thank you to the county manager and the deputy county manager. And with regard to the interlocal agreement with the city of Naples, and Commissioner Saunders tasked me with that, and then I ran into a wall. But we got through it, and we brought to light a lot of circumstances with regard to our county's utilization of our beaches and clarity coming from the city of Naples with how they're spending the money, what they're spending the money on, and so on. So it really, the accolades go to our county manager and deputy county manager for formalizing that agreement and moving over into some further discussions over in the TDC, the Tourist Development Council, with regard to future expenditures. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'd like to just revisit how, the very beginning of this meeting, thanking the staff and Mr. Finn for what we put you guys through last Thursday. I know Mr. Finn had said they ran, when he woke up on Thursday, he's probably thinking, well, we ran all these models, we got it down to a certain amount of time that, when we finally given the football and we got to go run to the goal line. But I can almost guarantee that he didn't run that model that we handed him sometime after midnight on Thursday. And but when the task they were given and how they completed it in a timely fashion, I have to commend them and thank the staff and Mr. Finn and his staff on what they accomplished. They were given a mission and they brought it to fruition, and we had the opportunity to vote on it. And I will be addressing the city of Naples, the mayor and their council, I think next Wednesday or 2 Wednesdays from now. So, Mr. Rodriguez, if you could definitely get me some information on where we're at with that, the parking and the beach stuff, because it seems like that's always the topic I always end up talking about when I'm there, giving them this status of the county and what we're doing, working in partnership. So, but I think we had a pretty productive meeting today, and I think once again we had ideas out there, and we all raise our eyebrows and look at each other and say, "Huh, I didn't think of that, but let's see what we can do with it." So, thank you.
Well, I will tag on a little bit to what Commissioner Colwell has said. The most amazing thing about that workshop, or that hearing, was that really nobody got mad. We had a lot of disagreement on some very big issues, and but it never got heated. It was all a very professional conversation. I think that says a lot about our staff, says a lot about the commission, but also the public. The public was, they perhaps didn't agree with everything that happened, but everybody was very cordial and worked together professionally. But you're right, Commissioner Colwell. Our staff really rose to the task. But what's amazing about our staff is that Thursday was not the only time that they've had to spend a lot of extra hours. I think if you call the county at 7 or 8 o'clock on any day during the week, I think Mr. Finn is probably at his desk, or at least he's somewhere with his computer, and hopefully he'll get a little bit of rest. But that goes for everybody on our staff that works so hard on that. It was a job well done, and I think everybody handled it well.
I'll just close by saying the reason why all 5 commissioners wanted to bring Mr. Finn and his group up here was because a lot of times, like I said, it's the people behind the scenes that never get seen that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And so it truly is a team effort. It's never one commissioner. It's never one person. It's never one department. We all move forward. The old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think, we're starting to see a lot of that. And, to Commissioner Saunders' point, at a time, and we sort of have talked about this informally, sometimes when we're grabbing a cup of coffee, it's disappointing to see even groups of elected bodies, even close to this county, maybe even in this county, but certainly across the nation, that are struggling to show professionalism and work closely together. I think we're all proud of how we do it here, even when we agree to disagree. We can be disagreeable, and we can voice those concerns, but once we get outside this building, I think the real strength of, and when I say the Collier County Commission, I really mean the entire Collier County team, is that on the outside, it's one decision, one voice. We look professional, and if we stray, we talk to each other, but then we get back in the same lane, and not a lot of elected bodies are doing that right now across the country. So I can only say I'm really personally proud of this group and the team that's not even in this room, that's in this building, that's doing so much to support all of us. I did make some notes on, we've touched on it here. I had written the county operations analysis, basically, and as we're talking about, so maybe next Tuesday would be a time to continue that discussion. None of us want to see it die on the vine. I think it's more than just a consultant. I think you have expertise up here, and we all sort of voice different possibilities of diving into a different department. And, we don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, that's for sure. But there might be something that we can all brainstorm. And I think we are all sitting here burning some brain cells on what we could probably bring to Tuesday's meeting as maybe taking the next step forward and not letting anything die on the vine. Ms. Patterson and I talked about yesterday, and we're getting a lot of questions about the surtax that's going to sunset at the end of this calendar year. At some point, we need to start talking about that or deciding we're not. But we have the city of Marco, I think, that either has sent us a letter or is about to, and Ms. Patterson mentioned that we might shake the trees a little from some outsiders just to see if anybody wants to give us some input. But I don't think we want to be oblivious to it and then watch, and miss a window. I'm not being taking a side one way or another as to I think it should be put back on the ballot and voted for, or it shouldn't be. But I just don't think we should be, oblivious to it and then find out that maybe we could have had more aggressive talks to either continue it or at least give it that opportunity, or not. But it's definitely a data point. Did you want to say something, Ms. Patterson?
Yes, Chair. To your point is we have had questions from some of our other governmental partners about the future of the surtax. So what we're trying to avoid is if you have a number of these, send a letter or make their intentions clear that the surtax is important to them. We want the board to have adequate visibility on that to make a decision so that it isn't that we get to a point in time where it's too late and then it appears that, we didn't have the conversation early enough. And that was
Right.
to your point, Chair. So we have committed to talking to those groups that have come to us to talk about this. No putting the board into any kind of position of a yes or a no, but simply just collecting those opinions and then being able to provide that to the board so that they can decide kind of the future. Maybe it's yes, maybe it's no, maybe it's in a couple of years, but at least that way you kind of have a pulse on those that have been recipients of the surtax or expressed their interest in being included, if possible, in a future surtax.
I also wanted to thank all the people from the arts community that not only came today, but sent us so many emails, speaking with great passion and sincerity. Without a doubt, we unanimously up here with no reservation voted on a full funding. However, with plenty of conversation, very valuable conversation, I think we certainly have sent a message that we want to make sure that we're continuing to blow the dust off of things, and things are being documented and justified, and that we have a better chance to maybe spread the wealth around over the years than just writing a bunch of blank checks. So I think that was very valuable conversation, and we look for Mr. Behrens to be bringing us improvement to that part as well. And then lastly, just for the record, so we had some scientists down in the basement check. There are 2 Sheboygan locations, one in Wisconsin and one in Michigan. It's true. I got it. They are spelled different. They are, but they sound the same, right, Mr. Rodriguez? Mr. Rodriguez doesn't have a lot to do over there, so he was. I don't want to say he was the expert, but
I had him leaning.
Being a former Michigander, I take great pride in being visiting.
So,
and for the record, Terry can just write a bunch of. Everybody talking at the same time can go into the.
No, the only thing I would like on the record, there are 2 Sheboygan cities in Michigan and Wisconsin, and that was confirmed for today's meeting. But having said that, unless anybody else, another great meeting, a lot of great things happened here today. Thank you very